We begin our story with Kale on his journey. We see him catching some fish when suddenly, without any warning, a person appears above him and asks him the question that will change his life forever. Are you interested in something called magic or what? As you know, our guy is just living his life and doesn't understand anything about it. But as the days pass, we see this person start training Kale to use his magical power. He learns that he must focus his power and start concentrating on the target in front of him. He tells him, "You must prepare yourself because one day you will surely be able to use barrier magic. One day there will surely be innocent people in danger, and you must save them by any means necessary." After preparing the spell, he tells him to take a breath and release it calmly. When Kale starts following the instructions, he manages to execute them and burns the target in front of him. He is extremely excited and thanks his teacher, whose name is, by the way, Addis. They realize that today's spell was a bit difficult because it took him almost the whole day. The teacher, Addis, is a saint. He says, "By the way, teacher, the spell you used today normally takes people a full month to learn." Our guy isn't really interested in this talk and says, "So what? Come on, what's next? I want you to teach me some cool spells, dude." Teacher Addis tells him that's enough for today, and from tomorrow they will continue their training together as he wishes. Kale is about to object, but Addis tells him he shouldn't rush. "You like fishing, right? Let's go fishing together for a bit." After a few moments, we see them sitting in front of the lake fishing. Kale isn't happy with this situation because for him, fishing is very boring and he wants to learn more magic. The teacher starts praising him, saying, "You are truly a talented person. During the period I didn't teach you anything, I was sure you would become a great sorcerer in the future." He starts explaining that there is something called a magic shield that can protect you so you can move forward. But Kale says, "I don't understand you. You keep going in and out of the subject. Why did you even teach me magic?" Just as he is about to answer, the fishing line snaps because it caught a fish. Teacher Addis, being who he is, doesn't know how to handle it, so we see Kale step in to help. Even though you have awesome magic skills, you can't even catch a fish. After a few attempts with the stubborn fish, they finally manage to pull it out, but in the process, both of them fall to the ground. The days pass, and we see Addis begin to teach Kale all the magical spells he can teach him. We see him give him a huge thick book full of spells. So the days pass for them again until the fateful day arrives, the day Kale never imagined he would bid farewell to his teacher. Before leaving, teacher Addis tells him, "Be careful, teacher. If you get the chance to become a royal sorcerer, don't do it." Of course, he doesn't understand why he's saying this and starts asking, "Why did you even teach me magic?" He simply says, "Because it was a debt I owed your mother and it had to be repaid one day." From that moment we see the teacher bidding farewell to his excellent student and deciding to leave him. He walks away. A few years pass like a flash, and we see Kale has grown up and managed to enter the Royal Magic Academy. He is in the library starting to look through the records until he finds the biography of his teacher. We learn that he graduated first in his entire class. He says, "That's to be expected from my teacher, Jumboticha." It didn't stop there for him. No, he became an imperial sorcerer, but unfortunately after that he was exiled from the country, and to this day the reason is unknown. And from here he understands why his teacher was sad when he bid him farewell. If the problem is truly with the imperial court, then I must become an imperial sorcerer and completely change the system. And that's why I must do everything I can, because for me, this is the best way through which I can repay his favor. And suddenly a time skip happens, and we see Kale is in one of the dungeons with a group of adventurers. Their leader starts talking to him and informs him that from today he is expelled. Of course, Kale is shocked when he hears this and says, "What do you mean, man? This is nonsense." But the leader says, "You are expelled from the team as of today. You are expelled." We learn that the person in front of him is actually the crown prince of the kingdom. As for the girl, her name is Lin. As for the third one, his name is Ak. The leader starts talking to him saying, "Wait a minute, shouldn't you explain to me now what your role in the team is?" He says to him, "Wasn't I supposed to support you with my magical power?" He says to him, "God enlighten you. What exactly did you do in the last battle we were in?" He reminds him of the events of the last battle. The crown prince had to fight on the front lines himself. As for Lin, she was using her magical powers to defeat the enemies. As for X, he was the steadfast shield that blocked all the attacks. As for you, all you did was use some enhancement magic. Someone of your level shouldn't be using imperial level magic. He cuts him off and tries to explain what he was doing, but he says, "Shut up, not a word, you are a weak, pitiful person." Lin starts talking to them, saying, "There's no need for us to continue more than this. We should return now. Your words are considered an admission that you are afraid to delve deeper into this dungeon. It's very unwise for us to allow someone like you to join a royal team like ours. We should have discussed your joining the team amongst ourselves first, but our order, being kind-hearted, was the one who included you. And frankly, I'm fed up with clearing dungeons with a pitiful, useless person like you." Then he starts talking to them and says, I heard you excelled in the Magic Academy and through that managed to obtain the rank of Imperial Sorcerer. But in the end you are now incapable of doing anything without the help of others. He says to him, calm down, teacher, let's talk calmly with each other. But he says to him, shut up, what is that beside you? Oh right, he says to him, it's nothing, just a dagger. The Crown Prince draws the dagger from him and says, didn't I tell you before that it's not allowed for commoners like you to hold weapons? Kale confirms that they need it in the advanced floors. The Crown Prince grabs him by the neck and says, as long as you are a member of my team, you cannot carry out anything but my orders. That's why I strongly object to someone like you continuing in our team. He forcefully removes the cloak he is wearing, which bears the Imperial Magic emblem, and says, you don't deserve it anyway. Kali is shocked by what happened to him. The world suddenly turned black before his eyes. As for the Crown Prince, before deciding to leave him and walk away, he informs him, we no longer require your services from today. After that, he decides to leave him and walks away. But despite all that happened to him, Kale is still continuing his studies, hoping the situation will change. He learns that in the advanced floors of any dungeon there are anti-magic barriers, so he decides to write a list of the tools they must use to reach the advanced floors. We see him doing all this hoping to rebuild trust between them and have it renewed. The next day my friend Kale goes to the Imperial Palace, but here the guards prevent him from entering altogether. They inform him that from today, he is no longer an Imperial Sorcerer, and his rank has been revoked. You know that commoners cannot enter the royal castle without a royal order. And suddenly, while he is standing there, he sees Lin arriving. She says to him, you're an idiot, man, and you don't understand. You've been expelled from the team permanently. You've become a person, my dear, with no importance. As for the record radiation you managed to create when you were studying in the Royal Academy in the capital, it turns out it has no importance because the deepest floor any person has managed to reach is the 7th. As for you, you claimed you reached the 68th floor, which is almost impossible. Despite all the insults he is subjected to, he approaches her to make one final request. He gives her a letter and asks her to deliver it to the king. I only joined the Crown Prince's team because of a personal request from him. He asks her to deliver this letter to the king because it will help the prince in his new mission. She sees Lin approaching him and taking the letter from him, but she laughs a malicious laugh, and then she tears it up and throws it in his face, saying, what? Stop being naked and wasting time for nothing. She orders the guards to remove him from the place. Of course, Kale, seeing all that happened to him, is shocked and can't believe it. At the end of the day, we see him standing in front of the palace from afar. It's been 4 years since I graduated from the Imperial Academy and did everything I could to try to change the Imperial Court, but unfortunately, I couldn't change it. This makes him feel sad, and he apologizes to his teacher Addis for not being able to keep his promise. While he is standing there lost in thought, he is surprised by a girl calling out to him. The moment he sees this girl, his face shows signs of shock. Without any introduction, we see this girl running towards him and hugging him. This girl, my friend, is named Yuri, or they are old friends. They sit and chat with each other for a while. Here, Kale begins to tell her about everything that happened to him recently. We learn that the two haven't met for 4 years. He starts telling her that the moment he saw her, he started telling her his problems. She says to him, you know what, forget about that dirty talk. Anyway, I'll be in the mother city tomorrow. They are still working with the old list that distinguishes between commoners and nobles and all that stuff. It has become useless. He tries to stop her because it might cause her problems as long as she is here like this. She says, I don't care, by the way, there's no one around us anyway. She says to him, look, even though you've been through a tough time, I am very happy. After that, she starts reminding him of the promise he made to himself 4 years ago to rejoin their team again one day. He says to her, yes, I remember that. She says to him, exactly. That's why I came to the capital today, to bring you back and have you join the team again. Suddenly she stands up, stands and extends her hand to him, offering to enter the dungeon together again. Kale is moved by these words and says to her, by the way, I've become unimportant after losing my position. But she says to him, it doesn't matter. All that dirty talk, what really matters to me, is for you to return to the team. I assure you that all the team members have been waiting for this day impatiently. But in case you wanted to keep your position and return to the Imperial Court, no one among us will stand in your way or prevent you. Our friend, hearing these words, is extremely moved, and so he agrees to return with her. She says, I knew you'd return, man. After that, we see Kale starting to remember the memories of the past related to his teacher. He warned me a lot, even if the opportunity arose, not to join the Imperial Court again. Suddenly we see him waking up from sleep. It turns out it was all a dream. On the other hand, in the Imperial capital, specifically with the Crown Prince, news has arrived that Kale left the city 5 days ago and is returning to the northern city. He says he must have run away. I also heard he became an adventurer. The reason Kale joined the team in the first place was that this prince was somewhat curious because of the rumors that he was the best student in the entire history of the academy. That's why he was curious about him and wanted to see him. But in the end it turned out that this paper, we learned that they are now planning to enter one of the very dangerous dungeons, of course. So the prince's name spreads everywhere in the world, and we leave them for now and return to Kay. We see he has arrived at the northern city. This city is nicknamed the City of Dungeons because it is full of adventurers and dangerous dungeons. This is the most suitable place for adventurers, and they can do everything they want there. She starts talking to our friend and lets him know they are now working on the western ruins. For you to join our team, the first thing we must do is join the Adventurers Guild. My heart? Let me be very excited because their great adventure will start from here. But the moment they enter the Adventurers Guild, the shock awaits them. The employee there informs them that Kay is not allowed to join their team because he doesn't have a license. He starts asking, what is this license you're talking about? They learn that to join the teams he wants to join, one must have surpassed the 30th floor. For anyone to be able to pass that floor, they must have a permit proving they have been an adventurer for at least 2 years. Yura starts talking to the employee saying, wait a minute, wasn't Chris supposed to have reached us and started resolving this issue with you? I'm sure before I left. She told me she would handle this matter herself. The employee confirms to her that Chris did come and told her everything. She says, you know what, forget the bureaucracy and all the nonsense you're spouting. Give me the license and forget about this dirty talk, and that's it. After our friends find out what happened, they are utterly shocked and confirm that it's impossible for them to obtain the license. They leave the Adventurers Guild. The girl starts blaming herself for being stupid. She should have handled the matter herself and not sent an incompetent person like that. She starts talking to him and lets him know that they managed to reach the 52nd floor in the dungeon. Frankly, I can't wait for us to wait 2 years for you to join the team with us. She says to him, it doesn't matter. The most important thing now is that we start from the place we can all start from anew. He says he has no problem with that. Indeed, my friend, we see the two decide to head together to one of the forests, and suddenly they are surrounded from all directions by insects. It's clearly a tricky situation, and suddenly we see Yura starting to showcase one of her magical skills, which makes her very fast, and she easily destroys the first insect. After that, she starts finishing them off one after another, and her speed is something insane. Yura starts talking to Kay, saying, look, I thought this trip would be simple and we could finish it in a few hours. I didn't expect this many monsters to be waiting for us. But Kale says to her, don't worry, I'm sure something happened in the forest, that's why all these insects are in this place. She says to herself, I never expected that the two of us would one day get stuck on the second floor and not be able to get out easily. And so Yura doesn't hold back and activates her defensive magic and starts advancing forward to start finishing off all these insects by herself. But Kale objects and tells her she can't do that. They must cooperate with each other. But she says, there's no need for that talk because until now you haven't been able to regain your full strength. As for me, these insects don't cause me any problems, I'm sure I can handle them easily. And since we are friends, it's my duty to protect you in your time of weakness. Because of this situation, Cole starts remembering his teacher's words when he said, you must use that power of yours to save your friends. And from here he doesn't hold back and approaches breaking all the restrictions he had placed on himself. He starts bombarding these insects with his shots and finishes them off one after another. The moment she sees this, she is extremely excited. The reason for the intensity was that there were a few insects about to attack him, but she intervenes and manages to finish them off in the blink of an eye. Now he has regained his full strength. We see Yura using one of her spells to give Kay the opportunity to use the strongest spell he possesses. Indeed, he manages to cast it, and the barrier after that strikes the entire place, and the remnants of this awesome spell with his unique style allow him to easily defeat all the insects. You thought it was over? You'd be wrong. Suddenly we see a giant worm emerging from underground and is about to swallow this girl, but she manages to hold onto her staff, so he confirms that the giant worm is the one behind everything that happened. He starts talking to her and asks her to use enhancement magic on herself. As for him, he unleashes his power and uses fire magic, through which he manages to set this giant worm on fire and sends it to the afterlife. Because of this awesome situation with his unique style teacher, they start reminiscing about the past when they managed to reach the 68th floor for the first time. We see the entire team was in trouble and couldn't do anything with him, but then he arrived and used one of his awesome spells as usual with his unique style to be able to deal. Our part begins with a flashback from 4 years ago, specifically at the Royal Magic Academy, where the graduation ceremony for ARC's class is being held. But after a few moments our gang arrives at the place. They start announcing that they have achieved a new feat. They managed to reach the 68th floor and defeated the floor boss. Of course, all the students are in an uproar, unable to believe what happened, because the highest floor anyone had reached before was the 37th. As for our guys, They go to receive their certificates. We see that the first one named Sharon managed to get 4th place in the class. As for Chrysia, she managed to get 3rd place. As for Yuria, she managed to get 2nd place. And finally, last but not least, the one who deservedly got 1st place is Ark. Each of them receives their certificate. As they are about to leave the academy, they decide to form an adventurer team together here. Ark suddenly stops and tells them that he intends to join the Imperial Court. Even though they all wished he would continue with them to form a great team together, they don't stand in his way and tell him he is welcome to rejoin the team anytime, confident that they will have some adventures together someday. Anyway, we cut back to the present day and we see Ark with Yuria drinking in a tavern. She tells him he must celebrate today with a clear conscience because it's his return party to the team. There's no room for slacking like before, especially since the last spell he used during their mission together almost backfired, and Ark says to her, "I was sure nothing like that would happen because of my defensive mat." Yuria says to him, "Yes, I know that, but you still have to be careful. It's clear that she's already tipsy after the first glass of liquor she drinks." She slumps over the table and falls fast asleep. Ark isn't surprised that this idiot hasn't changed since the last time. Every time she comes to drink liquor, she passes out like this. He uses his magical power to put her cloak on her shoulder. He is surprised when someone talks to him. "It's clear you're an adventurer, but you're not from this city. Everyone here is just a bunch of ruffians, and such behavior doesn't come from them." But our friend ignores him and doesn't pay any attention, which makes the man very angry. He says, "You are an impolite person, that's why I'll teach you a lesson myself." He decides to smash a bottle over his head, but who does he think he's dealing with? Ark managed to use his magical power to protect himself. The man says, "Oh, I'm surprised by you." Before he could say anything else, Ark looks at him and realizes the man starts talking to him and calling him by his name as if he knows him. "From what I know, you are an imperial mage. I'm very surprised that someone from the elite mages like you is in a lowly place like this." Suddenly, we see him take something out of his pocket and place it in front of him. The moment Ark sees it, he is shocked. It's the permit he wanted to get from the guild. The man says, "Consider this my apology for what I did to you. But be careful, I have one condition for you to take." Ark says, "Wait a second, I don't understand, explain clearly." He says, "There's nothing to it, all I want is to see your magical power." Ark is surprised by this guy. He seems strange and suspicious. He starts asking him, "And who are you?" Suddenly Yuria starts to stir. The moment she sees the man, she is shocked because he is the guild master. She starts asking, "What are you doing here? Did you come to drink liquor?" Ark says, "Wait, are you really the guild master or is this girl drunk? No, you can come with me now and check everything." And indeed, after a few moments we see they are in an underground combat arena. The guildmaster starts talking to Ark, explaining that they usually use this place to test teams that want to raise their rank. Ark says to him, "So, let me understand, you brought me here just to test my skills, nothing more." He says, "Exactly. All you have to do is amaze me with your magical power." Yuria intervenes and objects to this, but here Ark stops her and says he agrees, because his magical power hasn't run out yet. This is a perfect opportunity for him to catch up with them, get the permit and enter the same missions with them. Yuria says, "Enough, really, we can't waste any more time than this." After that we see Ark and the guildmaster standing in the combat arena, each preparing in their own way. The man says, "Look, my friend, let me introduce myself first. I am Level, the guildmaster." Ark says, "Wait a second, that name sounds somewhat familiar to me. I think you are the powerful mage who managed to form an S-rank team before, right?" The guildmaster says, "Correct, but that was a long time ago." After moments of observation and preparation from both sides, we see Ark take the first step and begins to attack him with ice magic. It wasn't easy, but the guildmaster dodges it with ease. After that he starts gathering his magical energy and prepares to attack him. But who is he dealing with? Ark, the son of a dragon, manages to dodge it easily and starts to assess the situation. He realizes the guildmaster has the advantage at long distances, so he decides to close the distance. But at the same moment we see the guildmaster start using multiple spells on himself to enhance his movement and strengthen his body. A punch misses Ark's side. Ark is standing there not understanding anything, but the guildmaster doesn't stop there. He starts running around him in every direction. At the first moment of distraction, he decides to lunge at him. But Ark had anticipated this and managed to activate a magical barrier. That wasn't enough, because the guildmaster manages to break through it and slams him into the wall. Of course Yuria is very worried about him when she sees this. As for the guildmaster, he starts praising Ark and says, "By the way, you're not bad." Our friend gets up from the ground and says, "Now I'm sure you were an S-rank adventurer before." This makes him start thinking about how to avoid his attacks. I finally realize this idiot understands that he left the Imperial Court, meaning he isn't bound by any restriction. He starts laughing to the point that the guildmaster is surprised by him. He says, "Don't be surprised, because I was always holding myself back with restrictions, and now I am, so to speak, a free person, so I'll use all my power with ease." The guild master says, great, bring what you've got. Come on. Arc says, it doesn't need that, and starts activating his magical power on his wrists, turning them into a sword. The guild master is taken aback at first. You managed to use a shield, and now you're making a sword. You really are an amazing person and have many things you need to show me later. We see Arc is the one who initiates the attack this time. When the guildmaster tries to attack him, he manages to dodge one of them and blocks the second one. This makes the guildmaster very pleased with him and says, it's over, my friend. I think you can now withstand my attacks. Arc says, yes, I can do that, but it will be difficult. But more important than that, I must know exactly where your attacks are coming from. When the guildmaster decides to lunge at him again, he manages to find the right moment and activates lightning magic, slamming it into him. Not only that, he also decides to strike him directly with the magical sword. And if you think all of this is enough to defeat an S-rank guildmaster, you are mistaken. The guildmaster is standing like a lion and starts talking to him. He says, I'm very amazed that you managed to analyze all the magical attacks in such a short time. It's clear Yuria didn't waste her time with you. Because of that, he decides to use all his power this time, because he has truly started to enjoy the fight with him. After moments of hesitation, he starts to activate his magical artifact, which is a pair of magical gauntlets. He says, come on, my friend, let's play together a bit. Bring everything you've got, come on. After that, he lunges at him and Arc is amazed by his power, which has increased greatly. He is sure that if he hadn't dodged those attacks, he would have been finished. And the guildmaster gets up from the ground and says, no, I don't want you to bring out more quickly. I want to enjoy myself with you a bit. Arc says to him, give. At that, he attacks him with lightning, but all of this is useless because the guildmaster absorbs it with ease, to the point that he closes in on him and lands a direct punch on him. If he hadn't been able to block it with his shield magic, he would have been beaten to a pulp by now. The guildmaster says, don't get cocky. Why on purpose you won't succeed in this test as long as you keep running away from me. After that he starts activating his gauntlet. Here Yuria realizes the situation and starts warning Arc, telling him that the gauntlets the guildmaster possesses allow him to use healing magic. Meaning if they don't stop him now, he will regain all his power, and after that, he won't be able to do anything against him. Because of that, Arc tries not to allow him to heal himself and closes in to attack him with consecutive strikes. But despite all this, it doesn't affect the guildmaster in any way. He says, don't get cocky. If you continue in the same manner, you won't be able to do anything to me. But when he also tries to lunge at him, Arc seizes the opportunity and lands a solid blow on his body. This makes him furious, and he starts attacking him as well. This time, Arc is aware of the dangerous situation because if he takes a direct hit, he probably won't be able to continue fighting. He starts dodging them one after the other. After the guildmaster manages to get close to him and was about to land one on his head, we see that Arc manages to block it with his arm. This is the perfect opportunity for him, and he decides to thrust his sword into his body. All of this is useless because the guildmaster is furious and lands a blow on his head so powerful that it shakes the entire place. Of course, Arc isn't easy. The moment the dust clears, he appears from behind it and decides to attack him and deliver a fatal blow. But unfortunately, the staff he was holding breaks. As a result, his magical power completely collapses and he falls to the ground unconscious. Here Yuria approaches him to see what will happen to him and realizes that he has reached his limits. As for the guildmaster, he was about to announce his decision, but someone intervenes. Yuria says, wait, what's wrong with you, you lowlife? What were you doing just now? You were enjoying yourselves. I can't believe an S-rank adventurer like you was forced to use his strongest techniques, barely able to fight this trash thrown on the ground. But the guildmaster says to her, what are you talking about? Shut up. I already considered him to have passed the test from the beginning. But the whole point was, I just wanted to play with him a little. He can take his permit with all ease and enter the dungeons you're entering with you. After that, we see Rim approaches Arc and says, did you hear, my friend? You won the bet. Wait a second. You look like you're in a coma and can't hear anything I'm saying to you. After that, they take him to the guild so he can start resting. After Rim talks with Yuria, he finds out that Arc had been suffering in the royal court all this time. Before this fool wakes up, I want to know from you everything he went through. She says, that's a long story that takes a long time to explain. The guildmaster intervenes and starts mocking them. He says, I heard that this trash was expelled from the team he was in. He says yes, because those wretched people don't allow any commoner to be in the royal court. The most important thing to them is trivial things like lineage and status. I'm sure if I were in his place, I would have gone crazy from the first day. He is surprised that Arc was able to endure all that talk for 4 years alone. Meanwhile, Yuria is looking at him for no reason. He starts getting angry at her. What is it? I don't have any reason other than that I agree with the opinion you're saying. What are they fighting with each other? We see a guild employee hits him on the head. She starts calling for the guildmaster and informs him that a disaster has happened and she needs him with her now. She doesn't know he is here with them in the room, so he hits her on the head and takes her from her mouth and tells them to leave. Before he leaves, he warns him not to go near the liquor because if he drinks it, it will have a bad effect on him. He ignores his words and isn't interested and goes to drink the liquor he wants. After that, he starts talking with Yuria. He says, "Look, I have enough time and I want to hear Ark's story from beginning to end." After she tells him about all the injustice he faced, he says, "What do you mean? What was he doing? He was entertaining the crown prince. And on top of that, he wasn't allowed to carry magic on any mission. He was forced to carry their bags." "What kind of nonsense are they talking about?" she says. "That's what happened. And besides, I am also as angry as you are. Not only that, they said the support magic that you said he possesses is useless." He is shocked. "Wait a second, what support magic? He wasn't using support magic before?" She says, "Just as you heard, he was forced to learn this magic from the beginning by himself, even though he has no talent for this type of magic." She says, "Look, teacher, regardless of anything, I am very happy for you now. His defense magic has become great, you'll see." He isn't interested in all this talk, and every time he starts thinking about what happened to his friend, he becomes furious. After a few moments, we see Ark finally begins to wake up from the coma he was in. He starts asking them where they are and what they are doing exactly. Yuria reassures him that they are at the guild. After that, she takes out the permit for him and congratulates him on managing to obtain it. He says, "Awesome, perfect. So now I'm allowed to enter the dungeons with you as you." But Rim says, "Wait, that's not it. Before anything, we must take revenge." Of course, these two are on the same page with their story. He doesn't understand what he's talking about. "The first thing we must do is storm the private palace of that son of a. Up to that son of a miser, catch him and beat the hell out of him." But Ark says to him, "By the way, teacher, I'm not angry, half as angry as you are." But Rim says, regardless of anything, you can't accept the situation without any resistance. But Ark tells him that what he wants to do is forbidden because teams aren't allowed to fight among themselves. After that, he approaches him and says, "Look, teacher, you have to let go of all this and we should start enjoying our adventure to the fullest. This will be the most suitable revenge against the crown prince. Who else?" He starts thinking about his words and says, "You are right. We must indeed become the strongest adventurers present here in the world. With me, the moment that son of a miser the crown prince finds out that we have become the strongest adventurer team in the world, and you are one of us, he will surely become furious. If his city falls into trouble one day, he will come to us like a dog, change or despicable coward, begging for help, and I will be very happy at that moment to say no to him and hit him just like he did to you." Ark says, "Done, I'm with you, teacher. The idea of us becoming the strongest adventurers in the world next to you is better than me just being angry at the crown prince. And after that, we leave them for now, my friend." We go to another scene also at the same guild, but we see that he is literally bruised all over from the guild master. That girl is from a team that is all S rank. And since he is now standing in a problem, the rest of the members of my team are all in a predicament. Immediately, we see the guildmaster convenes an emergency meeting for most of the members present here. He says, "Look guys, the first thing they must do is assemble a rescue team to go save the rest of Krista's team." He starts giving them important rescue details. This team is currently trapped on the 64th floor. The pressure is very high, and not just anyone can enter it. On the other side, we have Ark, who is sitting there, and is surprised when a girl arrives to see him. The moment he sees her, he is surprised. Yes, it's her, Krishia, his friend who was with him at the same institute. He starts asking her about her condition, but she says, "Be quiet, I'm supposed to ask about you. You look completely battered. Are you really that bad? Since there's a meeting happening right now at the guild, why didn't you go with them?" "No, it's because they requested all the adventurers here at the guild who are from rank A and above, and I'm basically an outsider to them. Our friend is completely battered." We see she starts channeling her magical power and begins to heal all his wounds. After she finishes, she says, "Look, I won't ask you where you've been all this time or what you were doing. If something is bothering you, you can talk to me as much as you want." Ark says to her with all honesty, "Until now I haven't been able to get rid of the restrictions I acquired in the royal palace, and that's what still makes me feel afraid. I know the adventurers here aren't like the nobles, but in the beginning and the end I still feel like a stranger to them." But Krishia approaches him and says, "Don't worry, teacher, we are with you." Suddenly we see the rest of the gang arrives to them. He starts talking to them, informing them that they have an urgent matter on the burner. To go to the western dungeon to rescue an S-rank team that is currently trapped on the 64th floor. Now the goal is for them to reach the team trapped on the 64th floor of the dungeon. If they were going down the normal way, it would have been impossible for them to arrive in time. But luckily they have something that will make the mission much easier. This thing was given to them by the guild master and it's called the dungeon core. This is a magical tool that lets you skip the bosses on the previous floors up to the specific floor where the core was found. This is the very core that Christina brought back with her, meaning they can use it to easily open the path up to the 64th floor. But despite this, they must remain very cautious. The boss of the 64th floor is known to be a monster like a zombie, meaning half alive and half dead. Therefore, they will rely primarily on Alec to kill it with his offensive magic. That's why the whole team tells him to conserve his energy as much as possible until they face the boss. But Alec asks them, sounding a bit worried, "So does that mean I won't participate with you in the fight?" Orange told him with full confidence, "Yes, that's the best solution. We can't risk you or deplete your energy, and we don't want it to run out before the real battle." After that, the team used a teleportation spell and instantly moved to the 64th floor. As soon as they arrived, they were surprised by a group of skeletons suddenly emerging towards them. Orange rushed forward quickly and began to skillfully thrust his spear into them without hesitation. Yura shouted, "Wait a moment, Orange! I need to be close to you to cast a protective shield for you." But he didn't really need it, judging by the way he was fighting. Meanwhile, Alec and Krisa were walking calmly behind them in the dungeon. Alec said to her, surprised, "I didn't know Orange had a relic piece like Levio's." Krisa told him, "It's not something that serious. It's a spear with 2 enchantments. One makes it extremely sharp, and the other makes it unbreakable." She looked at him and said, laughing, "But this type of weapon is more than enough for someone like Orange." After a while, the fight became boring because Orange was finishing off all the enemies by himself before anyone else could even move. Alec said to him, "Do you want me to help you a little? It looks way too easy like this." Orange quickly replied, "Let me finish off these insects by myself. This is my task." Alec and Krisa continued on their way, but suddenly Alec felt something strange. Something was following them in the darkness. He quickly turned around, extended his hand, and unleashed a powerful lightning bolt in the direction he sensed. The others stopped abruptly and asked him, "What's wrong?" Alec said to them, "I felt something was behind me just now, but I can't see it." Orange didn't doubt his words for a moment and said, "Okay, try to pinpoint exactly where and how close it is." Alec closed his eyes for a moment and said, "I can't see it, but I feel it's right in front of me. Exactly." At that moment, he raised his sword, gathered mana energy, and struck forcefully in front. The sword touched something, and at that moment the creature was revealed, a soul reaper emerging. Orange laughed and said loudly, "Clearly your senses are still as sharp as ever, hero." The way Orange spoke made Alec suspect that Orange knew about this creature's existence from the beginning. But to be fair, Orange did know that this floor had invisible monsters, but he had no way to confront them, so he pretended not to know anything and left it to Alec to discover on his own, to boost his confidence. He never received appreciation or trust when he worked as a royal court mage, so the feeling now that the team truly believes in him made him happy for the first time in a long time. But as he finished off the Soul Reaper, he shouted, "But that doesn't mean what you did was right." Krisa and Yura stood embarrassed and said, "We're sorry. We knew there were invisible monsters, but it was Orn's idea. We wanted to see how you would handle it on your own." Krisa laughed and said, "If you're going to yell, yell at Orns, not at us." She then looked at Orns and said sharply, "We need to talk about this as soon as we get back." Then she added, "Let's focus on the mission now and save the team we came for." The team continued their descent and found themselves in a wide corridor full of skeletons, much more than before. Orange smiled enthusiastically and said, "Great, this challenge is my size." Yura quickly said, "We're on a rescue mission, not in a tournament. Calm down a bit." But of course Orange doesn't like to listen when he smells a fight. He shouted, "All of you stay back, this fight is mine." This time Alec refused to leave him alone and said, "I won't let you be reckless again," and joined the fight with him. Yura began using spells to enhance their energy and attack to help them. At first the two were striking the skeletons with incredible speed, but they completely forgot that Yura is weak in combat and doesn't know how to defend herself. One of the skeletons was about to attack her from behind, but luckily Krisa approached and shot an arrow at the last moment, saving her. At that moment Alec apologized to them and said, "I won't take a risk like that again. All of you stay behind me." He stood in front of them and began gathering a strong magical energy. The air around him began to crackle with lightning, and the sound of the energy was terrifying. Alec said in a loud voice, "Everyone behind me," and used his great lightning skill. In an instant, a massive wave of lightning bolts descended, wiping out all the skeletons from the ground. After calm returned, Orange said, laughing, "Now we can continue without anyone holding us up." But before they moved, Orange looked at Alec. "By the way, why do you always use that lightning spell?" he asked, puzzled. "I remember when we were in the academy, you used many different spells and didn't rely on just one type like this." Alec was silent for a moment, remembering when he was in the royal court and the crown prince was always reckless, charging into dungeons without a plan. He was always forced to intervene to save him. He said to himself, from the sheer number of times I had to act quickly, I got used to using lightning because it's the fastest spell to save anyone in any situation. At that moment, they heard a terrifying sound coming from the end of the corridor, a strange sound full of death energy. Yura said fearfully, that sound must be from the floor's boss. Yura said in a tense voice, we need to hurry. Maybe the team upstairs is still alive. Orange said to her, okay, I'll go ahead of you. I'm the fastest among you. And Yura raised her staff and said, all right, I'll cast a speed spell on all of you. In an instant, their bodies glowed with a blue light and they felt a strange lightness. Orange shot forward like an arrow, with the rest running after him with all their energy. Alec, while running, looked at Orange and said with admiration, no matter how many times I see his speed, it remains terrifying, especially when Yura enhances his speed magic. After a while they caught up to him but were surprised to find Orange not fighting. He was sitting on the edge of a rocky cliff, looking down as if watching a movie. Alec approached him and looked down. He saw a man running with a huge monster chasing him from behind. The man was screaming, save me, Orange, help me before it eats me. But Orange was standing there annoyed and it didn't seem like he intended to help. Alec asked him, what's happening? Orange told him, that's a guy named Loki. He's the one we're trying to save. He works as the support for the team we came to rescue. He continued his speech, laughing. Frankly, his personality is annoying and no one likes him. The people with him are good, but he gets on everyone's nerves. Loki from below screamed, if you die, I'll haunt you in your dreams every night, Orange. Orange replied, teasing him, I don't care what you do after you die. Suddenly Loki tripped and fell to the ground. Alex screamed, we need to help him quickly. The monster is about to attack him. But Krisa raised her hand and said calmly, wait, this is normal. It's his fighting style. Alec looked puzzled and was about to ask, but the monster stepped its foot on a magic circle carved on the ground. Instantly fire ignited from beneath it and a pillar of fire struck it in the stomach. Alec looked on in amazement and said, so Loki had set a trap beforehand. Orin said with a smile, yes, that guy is a genius with tricks, even if his personality is irritating. Krisa said, he's indeed unbearable, but on the battlefield he's very clever. The monster started moving again, stepping on more magic circles. With each step a trap exploded. Alex saw that every time it fell into the same trap. Loki was standing there laughing at it like a madman, saying, you idiot, you fall for the same trap every time. After a while the traps ran out and the monster was still alive and well. Then the monster prepared to attack Loki and burn him with a single strike. But before the strike could reach him, Alec, Orange, and Krisa descended at the right moment and saved him. Orange grabbed him by his clothes and pulled him away while the others tried to distract the monster. The monster tried to strike Alec. Alec quickly created a protective shield in front of him, so the strike bounced back and hit the monster. But then the monster turned and ran towards Orange and Loki. The monster seemed to want revenge on Loki, of course, because of all the traps he had set for him. Orange knew he couldn't face the monster while holding Loki, so he threw him into the air towards Krisa and said, take care of him. Yura said to Krisa, take him and get up on the rock quickly. Keep him safe. Krisa said, okay, leave the rest to me, and grabbed him and helped him climb up. Orange then said, now I can fight for real. He looked at Yura and said, prepare all your enhancements for me. I want the maximum possible power. Yura began chanting many spells and the air around her became filled with glowing magical circles. She sent all the energy to Orange. Immediately Orange tightened his grip on his spear and lightning descended on him like an energy shield. He shot like an arrow towards the monster, flipped in the air and easily dodged the first strike. Then he thrust his spear under the monster's. The strike was powerful, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to take it down. The monster kicked him with its leg, sending Orange flying through the air, and he fell to the ground with force. Yura ran to him in fear and checked on him, saying, are you? Before he could answer, the monster raised its leg, about to stomp on them. Yura immediately created a shield to block its attack, and they enclosed themselves in a shield to protect. The monster kept pounding on the shield with its leg. Its leg was very heavy and the shield shook violently with each hit, close to breaking. Yura said, frightened, I can't hold on much longer, Alec. And she said to him, finish it off quick. At that moment Loki, who was watching, saw the scene and was astonished. Is this the legendary mage we've been hearing about? He got very excited and said, I have to see with my own eyes how he fights. Alec was standing, concentrating intensely, and many magic circles began to appear around him. Loki was shocked and said, he's preparing more than 20 spells at the same time. They say anyone who can manage 5 spells is called a genius. Alec knew the monster felt the real danger. The monster began to scream and move quickly to attack him before he could complete his spells. But Orange stood in front of it and said, you shall not pass. He raised his spear and blocked the strike, buying Alec the time he needed. After 1 second, Alec opened his eyes and said in a loud voice, Lightning storm. In an instant, dozens of lightning bolts fell like rain on the monster's body. Then he gathered all the energy into one huge circle and delivered the final blow. A concentrated lightning bolt descended from the sky like a death ray, but the monster jumped at the last moment and managed to dodge part of it. The explosion shook the entire corridor and smoke filled the place. Alec quickly said, "Be careful, it's going to attack again." Orange called out to Krisa and said, "Help us." Krisa raised her bow and fired the arrow rain spell. A cloud of arrows descended above the monster, hindering its movement. Yura seized the moment and threw a magical spell to immobilize the monster. Orange shouted, "It's my turn," and jumped very high into the air and thrust his spear into the monster's brain with all his might. Even though Orange pierced the monster's brain with his spear, the monster was still alive. It raised its huge arm and began preparing for a new attack. Everyone tensed up and Yura screamed, "Watch out, Alec!" The monster launched a huge fireball towards Alec, but Alec stood his ground calmly and said, "Good, I was waiting for this moment." He raised his staff and said in a steady voice, "Spell reflection." In an instant, the attack bounced off him and returned in the same direction with doubled force. The monster was caught off guard and couldn't dodge. The fireball exploded on it, and the entire area around it exploded. The explosion was enormous. Smoke cleared. The monster was completely charred and could barely stand. At that time, Orange jumped down from above with speed and struck it with his spear with all his force, splitting the monster's brain in half. Everyone stood Krisa said, "Finally, we finished it off." Alec wiped the sweat from his forehead and smiled. "Yes, the mission is accomplished." The monster fell to the ground and the light emanating from it disappeared completely. Yura looked around the place and said, "I hope the second team is okay." Loki came down from above, happy, and said in a loud voice, "Bravo to you, heroes. That fight was a masterpiece, especially the genius Mage." He said to him with a smile of admiration, "I've heard a lot about you, Mage of the Kingdom. They say you once defeated a Hydra beast with a single Alec laughed and said calmly, "I was the Mage of the Kingdom, but not anymore." Loki, of course, was surprised and said, "How? Are the people there crazy or what? To let someone of your talent go?" Alec just gave a simple smile. But Loki continued and said, "I didn't expect anyone to save me, but my team is still below facing the second boss." Orange was surprised and said, "There's a second boss?" Loki said, breathing quickly, "Yes, when we came down here, we discovered that this floor has two bosses. One of them is the one I was fighting, and the second is the one my team is fighting right now. It's a knight wearing black armor, but it doesn't seem alive. It's like an empty suit of armor controlled by an evil magic." Krisa said fearfully, "You mean our physical attacks won't affect it at all?" So Loki said quickly, "Exactly, and that's why we need Alec there. His magic is what can end it." He took out a strange silver cross from his pocket. "Take this piece. It's a relic called Shivar. This piece will help you use your power from up close." Alec took it puzzled and said to him, "You're giving it to me for free, just like that?" Loki laughed and said, "Yes, but with one small condition." Yuri said, "I'm sure there's a catch behind this condition." Loki said to her, "No catch. All I want from you is to fight the upcoming boss without using magic." Everyone was shocked and said in one voice, "You want a mage to fight without magic? How?" Loki said to them, "Just listen to me. That monster is definitely expecting you to attack it with magical spells. If you do the opposite and attack it in a different way, you will subdue it completely." Orange laughed and said, "You really are crazy, Loki, but you might be right in what you said." Alec looked at them and said with a smile, "Let's give it a try." So I wonder what... Then we return to the prince who expelled Alec from his team, and we see him and his friends running, chased inside the dungeon by two jackal-like monsters. The prince doesn't understand how this is happening, as he has never faced a problem like this before. He ordered Lin to use magic and wipe them out immediately. She tried right away, but for some reason, her magic isn't working now. The prince called her useless and decided to cut down the monsters himself. But as soon as he turned and tried to strike with his sword, he was countered, fell to the ground, and couldn't do anything. Lin and the knight immediately lifted the prince from the ground. This after he failed to defeat them, and they started running towards the exit. The prince, while they were running, kept thinking about what mistake he made and why he couldn't defeat them, saying his strikes were much stronger before. He then reached a conclusion and felt that he became weak from the moment he kicked Alec out of his team and expelled him, owed him. Yet, instead of admitting that Alec added strength to the team, he thought stupidly and said that Alec placed a curse on them to make them weak, and thus he would be able to take revenge on them after they expelled him. After they left the dungeon, the prince decided to go to one of the kingdom's sorcerers to see if he was cursed or not. He indeed went to a sorcerer named Fogan, who performed a quick check and confirmed that there was no curse on him. At that moment, the prince was surprised and in disbelief, saying it was impossible that he would face difficulty clearing the 30th floor if Alec hadn't cursed him. But Fogan knew there was an anti-magic field below on the 30th floor, so he told the prince he probably felt weaker because his support magic wasn't working. The prince mocked him, saying all support magic is trash and only relied upon by cowards like Alec. Fogan tried to remain calm in the face of the prince's nonsense, but was surprised that Alec hadn't warned the prince about the anti-magic field earlier, since he was the legendary student who reached the 68th floor. The prince kept laughing and said, "I've never seen anyone weaker or more despicable than Alec in my life before, and his reaching the 68th floor is just a rumor spread among the commoners." Fogan then didn't bother to reply to him, saying there's no cure for the prince's foolish arrogance. Suddenly, a guard entered and informed the prince that the king wanted to speak to him regarding the matter of Alec. The prince smiled, thinking his father would be on his side. But as soon as he arrived, the king began telling him a story about Deeth. He told him that Deeth was the court sorcerer, and he exiled him years ago, always describing him as foolish and stupid. One day he stood before me and said, "If you don't change your way of treating the commoners and the court sorcerers, a great calamity will befall the kingdom soon." The prince spoke up and said, he deserved the exile. How could a noble speak to the king in such a terrible way? But the king replied, the story didn't stop there. After his exile and being stripped of his noble title, he went to the Magic Academy and silenced his critics with his amazing skills. He graduated top of his class. Even though he could have done anything with his fame and power, he foolishly returned to the kingdom again and worked as a court sorcerer for the kingdom and the palace once more. During his work, he always told the king that the commoners are not worthless and that he must change his treatment of them until he disappeared a year ago. The king didn't pay much attention to his words at the time, but recently he started thinking and said, perhaps he was right. That's why he ordered the prince to go down and explore the dungeon. He wants to see if nobles are truly inherently better than commoners. And obviously, judging by the prince's condition, it seems he was completely wrong. The king said, perhaps it's time to change the policy of discrimination against commoners. From now on, the king decided to employ the talented regardless of their origin. The prince was shocked and said, this would be a disgrace to the family name if we decide that commoners can be in the same position as us. At that moment, the king admitted that he was the one who raised him on this idea, but change must happen now. The prince tried to argue that mingling with commoners like Alec only brings bad luck, citing his current situation as proof. But suddenly, a guard presented the king with Regulus, the remains of the book written by Alec. The king explained that when Alec left, he wrote a complete guide on how to plan for the 30th floor, specifically for Lin. Unfortunately, he tore up this book before reading it and knowing its value. The prince couldn't believe what he was hearing. He told his father he was tired, left him, and walked away. As he was leaving, the king called the sorcerer Fogan and asked him to help his son and stay with him. Fogan promised he would help him with all his strength. As the prince was leaving, he was literally having a nervous breakdown, unable to believe that Alec had hidden all this from him. He said, if Alec was talented and knew all these things from the beginning, then the problem was with me. I am the weak one. He gets extremely angry, literally breaking everything around him, and calls for Fogan, saying, I need your help. We return then to our hero Alec, who was asking Loki why he didn't want him to use magic against the boss. He understood that the ancient tools were powerful, but the boss was supposed to be immune to physical attacks, so he thought defeating him with a sword would be difficult. He told them, I know that Alec can defeat him using the sword. He just wants to pretend to be a close-range fighter, so the boss doesn't expect him to use magic. But Krisa didn't understand why they had to go through the trouble and deceive the monster. So Loki explained to her that this boss is as smart as they are. Nanto. Of course, Alec was surprised that the fighter was very intelligent and thought like them. Loki, of course, understood his suspicion, but asked him to hold back and stick to the sword until he gave him the signal. Alec agreed immediately. Regarding the signals, Loki told Krisa that he needed her help. He said the path to his companions was far on foot, so he wanted to use instant teleportation magic. But his mana wouldn't be enough, so he needed some mana from her. Everyone, of course, tensed up when they heard instant teleportation because it's a national secret, protected, and knowing its details alone could implicate them and get them into big trouble. But unfortunately, there was no other solution before them, so they decided that if any disaster happened, they would blame it all on Loki. He was drawing the circle and explaining the method of instant teleportation to Krisa. Yuri asked Alec, "Can we rely on Loki, Sodi?" Yuri told Alec, "We can't trust him blindly, but we can rely on him." She told Alec that she doesn't like his attitude, but when it comes down to it, they can rely on him 100%. She gave an example from 2 years ago. Loki led a large group of people into a high-difficulty dungeon, and thanks to his planning, the mission succeeded without a single casualty. So at that moment, she decided to give Loki's plan her full trust. When the circle was complete, they all entered. So Yuri was amazed. It was her first time seeing real instant teleportation. But Loki told them this was a simplified version, and would send them to a place he determined. He warned them that he would send them directly in front of the boss, so they must be ready to fight as soon as they landed. Loki activated the circle, and in the blink of an eye, they disappeared from their spot and appeared in front of the rest of Loki's team, who were fighting the Dark Knight. Loki's friends looked completely battered by him and said, "We couldn't face him. We should have run as soon as we saw him." At that moment, one of Loki's friends took out a magic orb and gave it to the fighter Krista, saying, "Go to the guild with this quickly, deliver all the information, and ask them to send fighters of Class A and above." Krista immediately took the orb and ran off. At that time, the two friends of Loki standing before the knight decided to attack him. One of them attacked with a sword, but the knight blocked her attack. The other attacked him with magical fireballs, but they had no effect on him. Then we see Ornest attacking him immediately without hesitation. He was excited. When he clashed with him, he was surprised by his great strength and was very happy about it. At the same time, Alec appeared from behind him and tried to strike him with a sword, but the Dark Knight jumped and dodged the attack. Alec was surprised that he had very fast reflexes. After that, we see the Dark Knight get angry at them and charge to fight them. At that time, Loki and Krisa arrived to help Ryo Marble and keep their distance from the battlefield. We see Yuri standing far away, constantly encouraging them to defeat the Dark Knight. But they were surprised that the knight's armor was insanely tough. However, that didn't matter to Ornest. He decided to attack him with all ferocity. As soon as he thrust his spear at the knight jumped into the air. Ornest said to him, "You pulled that move before, but I won't let you escape this time." He thrust his spear into the knight's clothing to pin him down, and Alec appeared from behind him while he was in the air, and with one strike of the sword severed the knight's neck. Of course, Alec and Ornest thought they had managed to finish him off, but things are never that simple. The knight stood up again and started moving towards them once more. They realized he was an undead monster like a zombie, and understood that the monster they killed earlier was his horse. Suddenly, Alec was shocked that the monster disappeared from in front of them, and they didn't know where he went. But when he looked up, he found the knight attacking him with his sword. He blocked his strike with great difficulty, and was surprised that he had become stronger and faster than before, meaning he was hiding his strength, and the fight now would be much harder than before. But thank God, Alec wasn't alone. While he was holding the knight, Yuri was casting a spell on Ornest to strengthen him. When Ornest was ready and prepared for battle, he immediately attacked the knight and delivered a spiritual strike that was able to knock his sword away. He asked Alec to attack, and Alec immediately attacked him and delivered a powerful blow that sent him flying far away. Alec literally couldn't believe the toughness of his armor, saying if it weren't for the ancient tool that transformed into a sword that he got from Loki, any other sword would have shattered into pieces when he struck him. And since the knight is essentially a zombie, no matter how much they hit him, he would keep reassembling himself and getting up. And indeed, his head returned to his body, and he let out a powerful roar that literally pierced their ears and disoriented everyone. After that, he suddenly appeared in front of Alec and delivered a powerful blow that sent him flying. But before he hit the wall, Yuri immediately caught up to him and created a barrier to cushion the impact. She ran to check on him. He told her he was fine. He hadn't expected the knight to know such combat skills. If it weren't for her barrier, he would have been literally dead. At that moment, he asked Loki, "How much longer do I have to hold the sword?" Loki was still preparing and told Alec he needed 5 more minutes. Alec said it's easier said than done and told him he only had 3 healing potions left. At that time, Ornest was fighting the knight and was barely holding on. He went and called out to Alec, saying, "Stop being lazy and come help me. I'm getting chopped up right now." At that moment, Yuri told them to run to help him. But Loki called Yuri and said, "I need you to help me." She told Alec to run alone and gave Ornest a healing potion, then entered the battlefield in his place. The two of them kept fighting him, trying to waste time until the 5 minutes Loki asked for were up. Just before the Dark Knight could attack them with a powerful strike to finish them off, the 5 minutes Loki requested ended. Loki activated a giant magic circle and smiled a hateful smile. The knight became tense and charged at Loki, cutting his chest. This was exactly what Loki wanted. It turned out this scene was an illusion, and the giant circle was a trick to lure the knight into a trap. Ice began forming under the knight's feet, and the real Loki was watching from the top of the tower. Ornus stepped on a teleportation trap prepared by Loki and Krisa. They teleported immediately behind the knight, and delivered a powerful blow from behind, knocking him to the ground. At that moment they asked Marble to finish him off. She indeed decided to attack him with her sword, but the Dark Knight dodged the strike at the last moment. It turned out this was also part of the plan. Loki had set another ice trap waiting for the knight. The knight realized that Loki was the mastermind behind all the traps, so he rushed to the tower to finish him off. Loki immediately drew a magical sword to block his attack, but they all knew Loki was weak in using a sword. At that moment, Yuri used the strengthening spell on Loki to enable him to withstand the fight, but his body wasn't used to the strain and was barely holding together. After that, Yuri used the triple seal skill to bind the knight. Indeed, many iron chains came out and managed to bind him. But the knight raised his hand and delivered a powerful blow to Loki, knocking him off the tower. As Loki was falling, he called out to Alec and said, "The opportunity is suitable for you now to finish him off." He told Alec, "Everything is in your hands now." Alec immediately looked at him and said, "Count on me." The look in his eyes was full of revenge. Will he be able? Alec beginning to draw a large magic circle, creating circles of magic around the knight. Loki was amazed because this was even more than what he had used against the second boss. But after all the fighting he had done, Kalec's body began to collapse from the pressure. He started feeling tired because Kalec had used a very large amount of his mana and performed a very complex. But he tried to pull himself together again, stand up again, and use the electric spell to defeat him. Although the spell caused massive damage to the knight, he was still able to move and began to free himself from the binding magic that Yuri had placed on him. Yuri was doing her utmost to try and restrain him to prevent him from freeing himself, but at this rate, he was about to break free at any moment, so she tells Kalec to finish him off quickly, saying she can't hold on any longer. But of course talking is easier than doing, because his body was on the verge of collapsing, and it was the second time in one day he was using a spell of that power. If anyone else were in Kalec's place and used all that mana, they would have been long dead. But at that moment, we see Kalec refusing to give up because he has reasons to fight for. He begins to prepare for one of his most powerful spells, the Lightning Dragon spell. As soon as the dragon formed, Kalec launched it towards the knight. The dragon flew at him, and the moment it touched him, the knight literally vaporized and was eliminated. The battle was decided in Kalec's favor. After the danger ended, Kalec fell to the ground from extreme exhaustion and fatigue. He started joking with himself, saying that having comrades to rely on makes a huge difference in times of danger. Yuri came and told him the truth, that they were the ones who had been relying on him the whole time, because they couldn't have defeated the knight without him. Ornus was happy that Kalec had finally returned to his usual strength. Regarding the bet, Kalec remembered the bet they made before the fight, that the first one to faint would have to do a challenge. He said that since he actually fell a little while ago, it was his turn. But since it was after the fight ended, Ornus decided to cancel the challenge and told Kalec that he is now forbidden from hiding anything from them, and if any is bothering him, he can talk to any one of them. Later, Ryo came and thanked Ake and the others for their help. Krista also wanted to thank Ake but in her own way, and she kissed Yuri on the cheek. Yuri was shocked then. Krista asked Kalik if next time he would like to go down any dungeon with her, but Yuri cut her off and said that Kalik is their mage and isn't available to help any other team. She said that Team Rikoma owes Kalik a lot, so leader Ryo offered to write a recommendation for Kalik. Kalik was surprised by the recommendation topic. Loki began to explain to him that to be promoted to S rank, a recommendation must be written for you, and this recommendation must be approved by an S rank team along with the guildmaster. After your great effort in the battle, the guildmaster would never be able to refuse our recommendation. After that, Kalik collected the Knight's Stone, and thus the mission to save Rikoma was completed flawlessly. When they returned to the guild, the employee bowed to Kalik for the mission's success, and told him he would be trending in the guild these days. She asked if he had rested after the big battle, and said that Kalik was in the best condition. She handed him his reward, and he was about to leave, but the guildmaster stopped him before he exited and said he has a visitor from the kingdom of Galan. Kalik was surprised because he no longer had any business in the kingdom now, but he decided to meet him. He found Fogan waiting. Among all the people he had dealt with in the palace, Fogan was completely different from them because he was a respectable man. That's why Kalik welcomed him when he saw him. Fogan asked him, "Were you trying to get Prince Regilius killed, especially since you didn't warn him that he was too weak to enter the dungeon alone?" Kalik replied calmly, "Do you think he would have listened to me if I had warned him?" Fogan then understood that Kalik was right and that the prince would never have listened to him. Fogan expressed his dissatisfaction with his current job, especially after Kalik's expulsion from the kingdom, feeling that his current job was a waste of time. Then Kalik asked him, "So have you now been appointed as the replacement mage for Regilius's team?" Fogan said, "You could call it that, but I want to tell you the truth. My job now is essentially a babysitter because the prince always acts like a child and insists on having his own." He told Kalik that after Kalik left, Regilius tried to challenge the 30th floor alone and was badly injured. Fogan wanted to teach him a lesson from what happened, but Regilius refused to take responsibility and asked Fogan to bring him here to face Kalik. Kalik was surprised and said, "So Regilius is in the city right now?" Fogan confirmed that he was present downstairs in the underground training arena. Kalik didn't expect to see him again but saw it as a chance to close the matter for good. So instead of ignoring him, he decided to go down and face him. As they were going down, Fogan told him that the only good thing about the prince is that he never gives up his pride, but Fogan personally didn't understand why the nobles were so insistent on proving their superiority over commoners and felt it was a waste of time. Kalik told Fogan, "You are also considered a noble, right?" Fogan said, "I was never interested in titles. I just want to live my life my way, that's all." When they reached the arena, they found Regilius standing in the middle. When Regilius saw Kalik, he was astonished. The first thing he said was, "The king intends to change the kingdom's management method, but I personally disagree. Out of respect for my father, I will overlook this matter for now." These words gave Kalik hope that Regilius might be convinced by his father's words one day. But Regilius continued, saying he still couldn't stand hearing advice from commoners like Kalik. Kalik told him, "If you had listened to my advice, you would be in a better state than this." Sensing that he still wouldn't understand his words, Kalik said, "You know what? I don't want to waste time with you." He told him, "You've lived 15 years always hearing that you are above commoners in everything, so of course you can't comprehend now that a commoner might surpass you. Anything trying to prove this you immediately disbelieve and call it lies." Then Regilius got angry, drew his weapon, and demanded to duel Kalik, asking Fogan to be a witness to the fight. Immediately Regilius attacked Kalik, forcing Kalik to defend himself with his magic staff. He was surprised because Regilius was using daggers instead of a long sword. Years ago, when Regilius was choosing his weapon, Kalik had advised him to use daggers because his body was too small for a long sword. Back then, Regilius ignored the advice and now he was fighting with daggers. But just changing weapons didn't make him better. Kalik landed a side blow and Regilius fell on his face. Kalik felt that Fogan had a hand in arranging this, so he asked Fogan, "What did you say to Regilius?" Fogan said, "I simply told him that if he wants to prove his words are right, he must defeat Kalik in a real fight. In the end, he is the one who chose to come here to fight you." He told Kalik that the prince needed them to set him up because he hadn't thought of any dirty tricks to win against Kalik and decided to challenge him in a direct fight. Fogan told him that the daggers Regilius had were ancient artifacts, so their power was immense. When Regilius attacked Kalik again, Kalik managed to block his attack, but his shield broke. That was the best he could do. Regilius had trained extensively with daggers for this confrontation, which made him realize that Kalik's support magic was the only reason he had gotten far in the dungeon. After expelling Kalik, he tried to pass the 30th floor many times and always came out battered, not understanding why until he decided to read the collected pages from Kalik's report. He was stunned when he found that every word Kralik wrote was correct. If he'd used it from the beginning, he wouldn't have failed like this. From reading, he learned that Kralik was very talented, which made it harder for him to accept that he had wronged him. So Regilius told Kralik to use the ancient artifact and face him seriously. Then Kralik asked him, "Are you sure you want to fight me knowing the difference in our power?" Regilius refused to back down, but before the clash, Kralik asked him a question. Is it true the king intends to change the kingdom's management? Regilius confirmed and added that his father had been testing the power of commoners, which is why he sent Regilius and Kralik to the dungeon together. If it was a test for Kralik, he understood why the king had always treated him kindly. The best news Kralik heard today was that the 4 years he spent as a mage in the kingdom were not wasted. After that, Regilius told Kralik to get ready because he wouldn't hold back and would use all his power. He activated the ancient artifact and charged. The prince kept trembling because he knew what was going to happen but waited for Kralik's blow to come from one direction. But at the moment of impact, Kralik changed trajectory and struck the ground instead of Regilius. The prince asked him, "Why did you spare me?" He thought of all the insults, neglect and ridicule he had subjected Kralik to. Kralik told him that he had built his identity on being superior because he was a noble, and that alone wasn't real. Regilius wondered, "What should I do with myself now? I came here to die by your hand, thinking that death was the best solution to preserve my honor." Kralik looked at him with pity and didn't know what to do. He usually doesn't laugh at people's expense, but this situation was truly funny because he thought Regilius had come to scold him as usual, but was surprised that he came to ask for life advice instead of insulting him. Then Kralik told Regilius that he wasn't angry. When Regilius understood that Kralik wasn't mad at him, he apologized for his behavior. Kralik was surprised and hadn't expected Regilius to admit his mistake. He understood that the prince was raised this way, which of course wasn't an excuse, but as long as he was ready to change, Kralik decided to help him. He extended his hand to help him up. Regilius extended his hand but then quickly withdrew it, still embarrassed and holding on to a bit of his pride. Afterwards, Regilius' kingdom mage Robe apologized for taking it that day and told him he could have it back if he wanted. With it was a letter from the king saying there was an empty seat waiting for him in the kingdom if he wished to return. Kralik asked, "Is the king ordering me to return?" But Fogan said it was a request, not an order, and if he wanted to refuse, there was no problem. Kralik said, "I don't need the robe nor the letter. I am happy with my team now and do not intend to return to the kingdom." Regilius accepted Kralik's decision and gave him the robe because it was his right. Then Regilius asked Fogan that they leave, saying, "I have nothing more to say to Kralik." As he was leaving, there was a slight smile on his face, and it was clear that Kralik and Regilius had started to like each other after previously disliking each other. But was Regilius' smile sincere, or was he plotting something against Kralik? Kralik and Regilius had started to like each other after previously The next day, we see Alec wanting to go out with them. At first they all agree, but when they find out he wants to go buy things from the market, they immediately make excuses. Ernest says, "My stomach hurts, I'm busy." And Claire says, "Take Yuri and go out, just the two of you. I have several important errands." Yuri is surprised because they've never refused any of Alec's requests before. So Alec says to her, "No problem. What do you say, since you're free, will you come with me?" Yuri is of course surprised by his offer and agrees immediately without any hesitation. They walk in front of the shop selling armor, weapons, and magical tools. Yuri advises him, "Be careful and always try to buy from the regular shops, not the specialty stores. The sellers in the specialty stores are very exploitative and will sell you things for multiple times the price." And sure enough, the first vendor they come across tries to trick her. He tells her, "I have a magical orb. Just by eating it, you'll be able to fight for 10 consecutive days without any fatigue or exhaustion." He was obviously trying to scam her. Alec immediately pulls her away and says, "Come with me, stop this nonsense." They continue on their way and Alec tells her, "If you want to buy something next time, ask Ernest or Claire." She replies, "I thought about that before and asked them to buy things for me. They wasted my money and only bought useless things for themselves that are completely unnecessary. That's why I refused to let them buy things for me after that." Then she tells him, "I'm happy you came back to us and joined our team." She says, "Let's rest a bit and have a drink." While they are sitting, Alec starts asking her, why does Ernest hate Luke so much that he doesn't like to deal with him? So she tells him, "I'll tell you about the reason for the disagreement. The problem started before Ernest obtained the relic weapon he fights with." She tells him, "You know Ernest is always reckless in his fighting and doesn't care about anyone. The thing he cares about most is his weapon. He always cleans it and takes care of it, and he never likes to change it. Even back when we were in the academy, we offered to buy him a new weapon, but he refused, saying, 'There's no need to buy a new weapon since mine is still working perfectly.'" She tells him, "About 2 years ago, we were in a dungeon finishing a mission. Suddenly we heard a distress call from Luke's team. As soon as we went, Ernest rushed in and attacked the monster and kept fighting it. But during the fight, he got injured while protecting one of Luke's team members. That injury made him angry and made him finish off the dungeon boss and kill it. Afterward, we tried to check on him, but he told us, "Don't worry, the injury is minor and doesn't hurt." But it turned out later that he was lying to us because he was walking tired and very exhausted. Luke was carrying him the whole way, and during their journey, Ernest's weapon kept hitting Luke in the head until Luke got annoyed with the weapon. Thinking it was finally over, he decided to get rid of it and threw it far away. Of course, this upset Ernest greatly, and ever since then, he's held a grudge against Luke, and the two of them are never on good terms. So Alec understands the reason for the strife between them. Alec then asks Yuri, "Well, why don't you like?" She says she's always arrogant and proud, and she imitates her way of talking for him. Afterward, they go back to the market, and there Yuri finds a magical necklace. This necklace doubles the mana capacity of mages. Yuri says it's very rare and wants to buy it, but finds its price high and doesn't have all the money, so Alec decides to pay for it and buy it for her, saying, "We're in the same team, we should help each other." She is very happy with his help. After that, they go to eat, then go to the library. Later at night, they watch the city from a high place, and the view is absolutely wonderful and impresses Alec. Afterwards, Yuri says to him, "I have an important question for you." She says, "When I met you the last time and offered for you to join our team, I felt you weren't really willing to be with us, but you were forced to agree so you wouldn't upset me. So, do you actually like being with us and want to stay in the team?" He says to her, "At first I was hesitant, but after I saw the ambition in Ernest and that he wants to be the strongest adventurer in the world, and after spending many adventures with you all, I became very attached to you and loved the idea of continuing with you. Truly, my life now is with you." He tells her, "I don't regret my decision to be with you in the team here at all." Yuri is very happy with his words and says to him, "Since I'm the team leader, I won't allow you to ever leave. You will stay with us for." He says to her, "Since you're the leader, there's something that's been bothering me for a while." Yuri thinks he wants to confess his love for her and that he has a crush on her. But he shocks her and says, "I lost my bet with Ernest last time, and I don't know how to handle it." He says, "Since you're the team leader, you have to make him forgive me this time." She gets angry at him, upset, and starts arguing with him. The next morning, we find Alex sleeping. Suddenly, Ernest arrives, wakes him up in an annoying way, and says, "Wake up, that's enough sleep. Strong adventurers shouldn't sleep too much. They have to wake up early." He wants to train with him. He knows Alec wastes his time reading magic books and says, "Find something useful to do." They start fighting each other. Ernest is, as usual, very excited and fired up. He tells Alec, "It's impossible for you to beat me in physical and hand-to-hand combat. At best, you can only beat me using magic." Yuri notices that Ernest is overly excited and might hurt Alec, so she tells him, but Claire says to her, "It's none of your business." Alec will know how to deal with him well. The fight between them continues for a very long time until Ernest manages to break Alec's sword and defeats him. Afterwards he says, "What do you say we use our real weapons?" and immediately summons his legendary spear, preparing to attack Alec. But Yuri immediately intervenes and stops him, saying, "You've taken this way too far, you can't use real weapons during training." Then the annoying Luke arrives and says to them, "Wow, you're up early in training." He tells them, "My team and I achieved S rank." They feel he's mocking them and decide to leave him and go. But he says, "I'm not mocking you. My team and I were promoted to S rank," and he shows them the guild certificate. Of course, they all go crazy and want to know how his team got promoted. Then Krista and Ryo arrive and start hitting Luke, telling him, "Stop your provocations." They tell them your team has also been promoted to S rank by order of Commander Fizzle. At that moment, Krista says to Alec, "You can now enter the legendary dungeon." She tells him the legendary dungeon has a very high danger level, perhaps higher than the level 65 dungeon. Riel says to him afterwards before leaving, "Anytime you face difficulty, we are ready to help you, just like you helped us last time." Then Yuri and Claire say to them, "What do you say we celebrate the occasion since both teams got promoted to S rank?" And indeed they decide to celebrate, but they refuse to let Luke be present at the celebration because he's too annoying. So they gather together at night and start celebrating their promotion. As usual, Ernest drinks until he's completely out of it. Afterwards, he threatens Alec and says, "From now on, you will stay with us and will never ever leave our team." They keep drinking and celebrating until late at night. Of course, after the party, Yuri looks completely out of it, so Alec carries her to take her home. But before they leave, the employee Misha comes running and urgently asks Claire to come help, because there's an injured adventurer inside the guild with a serious injury. When she enters the guild and treats him, Misha thanks her for her help. But she is surprised to find many wounded and injured people and doesn't know the cause of these injuries. She starts thinking the injuries are due to a monster attack, but Misha tells her the monsters have nothing to do with it. These injuries are from human adventurers like us. Claire is of course surprised when she hears them. Misha tells her there's a criminal group attacking adventurers calling themselves the Shadow Guild. Then Fizzle, the guildmaster, arrives and asks for Claire's help. When she goes to enter his room, she finds an S-rank adventurer who is seriously injured. This adventurer is named Olivia, and she was also attacked by the adventurers of the Shadow Guild. When Claire looks at the wounds on her body, she notices that the wounds are from knife strikes, meaning the one who attacked her was a high-ranked duelist. She feels her breathing is weak and is about to use healing magic to treat her, but immediately Olivia grabs her hand and says, "Who are you? Why am I here?" Claire tells her, "You are now in the Adventurers Guild, and you're here with me so I can help you." Olivia doesn't remember anything at all. But when Claire tells her she was attacked by the Shadow Guild, she becomes very upset, keeps cursing someone, and seems to want revenge. She asks Claire to heal her quickly so she can go finish him. But Claire tells her, "Your body is completely exhausted. It's impossible for you to fight in this condition." Olivia argues with her and grabs her by the clothes. But Claire, of course, is proud and arrogant and refuses to heal her unless she lets go. So Olivia apologizes to her, and immediately Claire starts healing her. She notices that her body has many old wounds as well, and it's clear she has fought many battles. Claire thinks, I wonder who could have hurt her. She's a strong adventurer who has fought many battles and emerged victorious. She uses healing magic on her and stays up next to her until the next morning. And we return to our hero Alec, who is sitting in the library reading many books about magic so he can enter the legendary dungeon and have a lot of information about it. Suddenly he finds a young boy sitting in front of him. The boy says, "So you're Alec?" Alec is surprised that he knows his name. Yes, the young boy says, "I've been waiting for a long time." He says, "I'm hungry now. Let's go sit somewhere else and talk." When they go to sit in a restaurant, the boy literally finishes 5 drinks by himself. Alex still doesn't understand what this boy wants from him. Afterwards, he introduces himself, and we learn that the young boy's name is Lorge, and he is also an S-rank adventurer. He says to Alec, "I'm here with you to study you as a type of fighter." He tells him in the end, "You are the ideal substitute I've been looking for," and offers to Alec that he join his team. Alec, of course, hears this and is shocked. I wonder what the story is with this adventurer. The next day, Claire goes to check on Olivia. As soon as she enters her room, she finds her training. Strangely, the guild master Fizzle is sitting in front of her. Claire yells at him, "How can you let her train when you know she's tired?" He replies, "I swear I tried to stop her all morning, but she's stubborn and doesn't listen to me at all. Even when I asked her about the Shadow Guild, she refused to tell me any information." So Claire goes to Olivia herself, holds her hands to calm her down, and tells her, "You are still injured, don't be afraid." After that, the guild master asks her, "Tell us, what information do you know about the Shadow Guild? Who attacked you and did this to you?" But Olivia still refuses to answer and tells them that she is fine now and asks Claire to use her healing magic again to fully heal her. However, her way of speaking as usual doesn't sit well with Claire, so Olivia apologizes to her. Claire then asks the guild master to leave because she will start treating Olivia and no man should be present among the girls. She kicks him out and closes the door in his face. While treating Olivia, Olivia asks her, "Don't you want to know what happened to me?" Claire says, "Since you refused to answer from the beginning, I won't pressure you and I'll leave you alone. What's important to me is treating you. I don't care about anything else." Afterwards, Olivia genuinely feels herself starting to improve, so she begins to apologize to Claire, saying, "I'm sorry for the way I spoke to you the first time I saw you and for my rude way of dealing with you." But Claire isn't upset with her, hugs her, and then uses a spell in her mind. Olivia asks, "What are you doing?" Claire says, "This is a healing spell that will improve your mood and condition." We learn that when Claire was young and feeling upset and sad, her mother would come and hug her immediately and use this spell on her mind to change her mood so she wouldn't be sad anymore. Afterwards, Olivia says to Claire, "Make us 2 cups of tea." When Claire makes the tea for her, Olivia says, "Why don't you go get us some food to eat while we drink tea?" As soon as Claire leaves, we are surprised to see Olivia putting something in the tea. Then we cut to him, likely Calc or the main character, telling Ernest and Yuri about the adventurer Lorg who offered him to join his team. Ernest says to him, "It's obvious he tricked you with his young appearance, making you think he's still a child. He looks like a small kid because he is actually a dwarf." We learn that Lorg offered to join their team to go down to the last level of the dungeon and defeat the boss on the final level. After that, they would focus on searching for members of the Shadow Guild and take revenge on them for what they did to the adventurers. Lorg tells him, "We found out you are strong, so you will help us clear the dungeon quick." He takes out the magic stone from the last level they reached and gives it to him as a gift to persuade him to join them. But Ernest gets very upset that he offered to leave their team and join them, taking the magic stone from him. Ernest says, "Let's go find that dwarf kid and teach him some manners. How dare he ask you to leave us and join them?" On their way, the guild employee, who always seems to bring nothing but bad news, comes to them and says, "Hurry, Claire is in a very big problem and needs help." When they go to see her, they are surprised to find her walking weakly, unable to move properly. She tells them Olivia put a sedative in my tea to escape from me and go to the dungeon alone. Ernest says to her, "What's the problem? Let her go." Claire says to him, "How can I let her go when she is still tired and the wounds on her body haven't healed yet? At this level, she won't be able to fight at all." Ernest says to her, "Since when are you so kind and care about members of other teams?" He says, "We have no relation with anyone, let's just focus on our own team." Claire says, "What made me want to help her is that she was betrayed, and that's the thing I hate the most in my life." She tells him, even though she is a ranks fighter, she suffered serious injuries from a very strong fighter. In her condition, if she decides to challenge him again, it's very likely he will finish her further off and kill. She says to him, "I think it's our duty as adventurers to protect anyone in danger." Then she leaves them and goes to search for Olivia. But as soon as she exits the guild door, she is surprised to find him, Calc and Yuri standing at the door ready to go with her to search for Olivia. They say to her, "You are one of our team and we can't abandon you for any reason." She looks at Ernest and teases him, "What hero changed your mind? Weren't you saying you didn't want to come with us?" He keeps yelling at her, grabs her by the head and says, "Let's finish this mission of you." He says, "Since the dungeon we're going to is full of strong monsters, I will definitely enjoy fighting there." They indeed arrive in front of the dungeon, and Ernest is excited as usual that he will meet strong monsters inside. Yuri tells them that this dungeon is like a maze full of instant teleportation magic. Suddenly they hear a voice saying, "You must be careful and never separate from each other, because this maze is full of traps." We learn that this is the adventurer Marble who came to go with them. When Yuri asks her, "What are you doing here?" she tells them, "I heard from the guild that Olivia went while she was tired and sick, so I decided to go help her. But it seems I arrived late." Of course, when she sees him, Calc, she gets excited and is happy to see him again. She approaches him and says, "I'm happy to go on a mission with you now because I want to watch your external fire magic." But of course, Yuri, when she sees her interacting with him like that, gets angry and says to her, "This is not the time for flirting, honey. We are in a big problem right now." Ernest here is surprised and says, "The strange thing is that the members of Olivia's team always do missions separately and no one helps the other." Marble tells him, "Olivia has always been a very cold warrior. She joined our team just to get a permit to enter any dungeon." But she tells them, in truth, she is very kind. She remembers the old days when she was training. Marble was very impressed with her sword skills and always asked her to teach her, but Olivia always refused and requested to always be alone. So Marble said to her, "Aren't we friends?" Olivia said, "I joined your team just so I could have a permit to enter any dungeon." Marble was very happy and said to her, "This way I'll be able to enter any dungeon with you and learn from your sword skills while you fight monsters." We return from the flashback and see Marble saying, "Even though every time I told her I would go on a mission with her, she always went alone and never took me with." Marble tells them, "I feel now that she is suffering alone inside the dungeon because her injury is very serious and hasn't improved yet." She asks them to help her quickly and try to find her before she faces danger alone inside the dungeon. Calc says to her, "Don't worry, leave this matter to us. We will be able to reach her quickly and save her." Afterwards, Ernest throws the magic bracelet and says, "Wear it on your hand so if we get separated in the dungeon, we can find each other's location." Before they enter, they ask Yuri as their leader to start saying the motivational words that encourage them before they enter any new mission. As soon as they enter, Claire begins to activate the instant teleportation spell she learned from Loki. Yuri tells them that she must concentrate while casting the spell because this dungeon is like a maze, and if we get separated, we will be able to meet again quickly using these gates. But Ernest says, "I gave Calc the bracelet for his hand, and I will be able to reach him quickly if he gets lost from us. That spell is unnecessary." Claire immediately gets angry and kicks him very hard, literally sending him flying away. While Ernest is falling unconscious, a strange spell appears beneath him and Calc realizes it's a trap. When he runs to catch up with him, the same spell is cast on him and they both disappear. Suddenly, Calc opens his eyes and finds himself facing very strong monsters like boars. They immediately start attacking him, but Calc immediately uses his lightning magic and manages to eliminate a large group of them. Suddenly, a monster appears behind him and is about to attack him immediately, but it gets hit by an arrow and dies. We learn that it was Claire who killed it and managed to reach Calc and locate him through the bracelet he is wearing on his hand, which he got from Ernest. He asks her about Yuri and Ernest and says, "Let's go catch up with them quickly." She says, "Don't worry so much, they are also fine and together right now. Unless you're making up a new excuse because you don't want to continue the mission alone with me." After that, they start walking through the dungeon to return to Ernest and Yuri. On their way, they encounter a very large group of monsters and immediately start fighting. Calc is happy that he is fighting alongside Claire and says to her, "I didn't expect your skills in using the sword to be so strong." She tells him, I spent a very long time training and using the sword without using any magic spells at all. She tells him it was impossible for me to let Ernest keep mocking me and saying that I'm a weak swordsman. Then they continue their way. Here, Claire says to him, you keep praising me and saying that I'm a great fighter, but you are the strongest among us. You can use combat magic and support magic at the same time. Suddenly they find the bandage that Olivia was being treated with lying on the ground, and they realize she is close to them now. At the same time, we see Ernest and Yuri running from a very large number of monsters because Ernest was the one who opened the door to all these monsters. At that moment, Yuri uses earth magic and manages to break the ground beneath them, making a very large rock lift them up and away from the monsters. But Ernest isn't used to running away from any confrontation at all. He immediately takes out his weapon and charges at them. Yuri immediately uses support magic on him, and Ernest with great force flies at them and literally finishes them all off, and the head of their leader flies off. When the monsters see their leader's head has been cut off, they immediately get scared and run away. After the battle, Yuri says, God bless, you turned out to be so awesome and ghost-like. Ernest says to her, do you think Calc and Claire are okay, or did something happen to them? She says, of course they are fine. Have you forgotten Calc's strength? Suddenly they stop in front of the maze monster and find that this monster is killed, turned to stone, and shows no signs of being killed by magic. Yuri says, is it possible he was killed with just one strike? Ernest isn't surprised at all and says, I know who did this. It must be the owner of the sacred sword, Milia. We learn that this Milia is the leader of Olivia's team and that he defected from their team and joined the Shadow Guild. We see him talking to a leader of the Shadow Guild who says to him, why didn't you finish off Olivia since you are so strong and managed to kill the dungeon monster with one strike? He says to him, my history with her is very bad. I know all her movements, but she is a strong fighter. The leader says to him, since you refused to kill her, why did you decide to join the Shadow Guild? He says, I didn't join you out of love for you. I joined to experience something new and to be able to increase my power level. Suddenly, members of the Shadow Guild enter and tell the leader that there are intruders, meaning, of course, Calc and his friends. The leader of the guild says, finish them off quickly. He gets very excited for the fight and then eats a very strange magic stone. We cut back to Calc and Claire after they find Olivia's location. She is of course surprised to see them and says, it must have been Lorg who told you my location. When they try to take her back with them because she is injured, she of course refuses and says, I haven't taken my revenge yet. I haven't gotten my battery. She says to Claire, I don't want you to use your healing magic on me because I know you will refuse to help me with it now. When she leaves them and walks away, Claire gets very angry and says to her, after you brought us all the way here and we got exhausted because of you, you want to just leave us and walk away so easily? She asks Calc to stop her from escaping. He says to her, do you want to take revenge on the Shadow Guild alone? She says, the Shadow Guild has nothing to do with this. These are personal matters between me and someone else. She says, I want to settle my score with my former leader, who was the reason my mother was killed. She is of course referring to leader Milia. She begins to cast a teleportation spell, and Claire and Calc run towards her to stop her. But suddenly all three of them disappear. When they open their eyes, they find themselves in a monster's lair, with a very large number of giant monsters standing in front of them. We continue our story after Alec and his friends reach the monster's nest. We see Alec get excited, and he doesn't care about any huge monster in front of him, and he immediately attacks them and fights them. And at that time, Kreza decides to use healing magic on Olivia to heal her and make her help Alec in fighting until she performs the instant teleportation spell because it needs time. And after Kreza heals her injuries, she immediately flies towards Alec and says to him, I will help you fight the monsters. And this time, Kreza is preparing for the instant teleportation spell, and Alec is busy killing the monsters attacking him. And suddenly he finds a giant ghoul standing in front of him, and it immediately attacks with the shovel it has, but Alec immediately escapes from it and says to him, you are too slow, and he stabs the ghoul in its back with the sword. But the ghoul afterwards gets up and isn't affected by Alec's attack. And suddenly, Alec is shocked that its head flew off in seconds, and he knows that Olivia is the one who cut off its head, and he is surprised by her strange speed in using the sword to the extent that he didn't see her drawing the sword and cutting the ghoul's neck. Afterwards, Olivia says to him, it's clear that you haven't trained well and you are supposed to be from rank S, meaning you possess greater power than this. Afterwards, Kreza has prepared the instant teleportation spell and calls for Alec to join her and escape quickly. But suddenly the spell is cancelled and disappears, and she knows that the one who cancelled the spell is the Demon Slayer, and this way they won't be able to use magic at all. And the Demon Slayer keeps hitting with the club he has and summons a large number of monsters to attack them. And suddenly the monsters are gathered around them, But Olivia Boss never surrenders and she immediately flies and attacks them and keeps eliminating those monsters. And Alec of course watches her while he is shocked by the great skill and strength she possesses, and he knows how proficient she is in the art of using the sword in a magnificent way. And of course her skills make Alec change, and he immediately attacks a monster and kills it. So she is very impressed with his skill and says to him that you need a little training and you will be a very strong fighter. And she says to him that the sword you have is special but you haven't mastered all its skills yet. And she gives him some advice while they are killing the monsters so he can eliminate them all easily. And she says to him, try to make your body and the sword become one thing so you harmonize with each other and can use all the sword skills. But the demon slayer keeps hitting with the club he has and summons a very large number of monsters. So at that time Olivia asks Kreza to locate this demon slayer and stop him from summoning a very large number of monsters every time. And Kreza points to the place where the demon slayer is located, but she says to her that the number of monsters protecting him is very large and it's difficult to reach him. But of course Olivia doesn't care at all and immediately flies towards them and keeps killing them. And Alec here says, am I just going to keep watching her eliminating the monsters while I stand silent like this? And he immediately attacks too. But Kreza says to him, be careful, there is a giant bird that will attack you. And at the last moment Alec manages with his sword to stop this bird's attack, but the bird is strong and very heavy. However, Alec succeeds in pushing it away, but the bird still refuses to surrender and keeps running after Alec. And Alec at that time finds a giant ghoul standing in front of him, so he comes up with a plan to trick them into colliding with each other. And indeed, at the last moment, he manages to dodge the ghoul's attack and makes the bird plunge its beak into the ghoul's stomach to kill it. But the surprise is that the bird finishes off this giant ghoul, and at that time Alec realizes that the bird is indeed very strong, and there is no solution but direct combat. At the same time, Olivia is on her way to the demon slayer who is walking with the club, and she keeps killing the monsters she finds in front of her very easily until she finally manages to see him, and she immediately attacks him with the sword, stabs him in the chest, finishes him off, and the club flies from his hand and she breaks it. At this time, Kreza has finally started preparing the instant teleportation spell and calls for Alec to get ready to escape with her. So Alec decides to use a super spell to finish off the monsters before leaving, and he uses his special lightning spell and literally electrocutes and finishes off all the existing monsters. And Olivia here notices that he is a sorcerer, not a swordsman, and says that's why he wasn't proficient in all the sword skills. And after that, Alec goes to Kreza, and they call for Olivia to join them. So she finishes off the monsters in front of them, and at the last moment she grabs Alec's arm, and they enter through the instant teleportation gate, and after they exit the monster's nest, we see here Olivia yelling at Alec and saying to him, why didn't you tell me you are a sorcerer and not relying on sword skills, and you made me bully you all the past period. So he apologizes to her for not telling her all the information about him, but in the end she thanks him and says to him, if it weren't for your presence with me and your help, I would be dead now. And Alec also thanks her for the lot of information she gave him about sword skills. At this moment, Kreza says to them, why are you guys happy? Don't you realize the size of the injuries Olivia has? And she says to her that my magic can only heal simple injuries, and if Olivia continues fighting in this way, her injury will multiply, and she might die immediately. And she says to her, Kreza, I know that you want to take revenge on the traitor who killed your mother. So Olivia says to her, exactly, and she starts telling them her story with Milia when she was young. And we learn that in the past when her mother, the adventurer, died, at that time Milia came to her and decided to adopt Olivia to take care of her and raise her. And he actually started teaching her sword skills and literally didn't withhold any information from her at all. And he was teaching her how to become a strong fighter for him. And Olivia says, at any moment I remembered my mother. He was always there by my side and always comforting me, and he was like a father to me exactly. And she says, I was attached to him and trusted him to the utmost degree, and he was practically everything in my life. Literally until I went with him on one of the missions, and he was amazed at my great strength at that time and said to me, you have finally become a strong fighter, and the time for revenge has come for you. And immediately he hit her with a strong blow with his sword, knocking her to the ground. And after that he approached her and said to her, I want to tell you an important piece of information. And he says to her, I am the one who killed your mother. And we learn that Milia's father before he died was Milia's teammate in the team, and we return from the flashback and see Olivia laughing like crazy and saying that she was foolish to trust the person who killed her. And after that she shows them her back, and they see the strong injury she received from Milia, and she says to them that the only thing left for her is the scar he left on my back. That's why it's impossible for me to forget him, and I must take my mother's revenge and finish him off. So Alec here takes off his jacket and covers her and says to her, I feel all the suffering you went through, but I want to tell you that I was like you one day, frustrated, and when I met new friends, they managed to get me out of the bad state I was in. So Olivia says to him, I don't need friends and I want to take my revenge by myself. So he says to her, your friend Lorge and also Marble were very worried about you, and Lorge told us that he decided to take your revenge by himself and finish off Milia. And after that, Kreza approaches her and uses healing magic on her and says to her, from now on I won't allow anyone to harm you no matter the reason. And she says to her, we are by your side and will never abandon you. So she says to her that Lorge and Marble said the same thing too. But unfortunately no one knows Milia's real strength. So Alex says to her, no matter how strong he is, we will always be with you and help you with any problem. And Kreza also hugs her and kisses her on the forehead to calm her down and performs a reassurance spell on her. Afterwards we go to Ernest and Yuri, and Ernest is annoyed by the large number of traps in the dungeon and is surprised by Milia's strength, who is able to finish off the dungeon monster located on the 73rd floor. And Yuri here is worried about Kreza and says, I wonder if they are okay or if something happened to them. Afterwards we go to the Shadow Guild where one of them is eating the core of the adventurers he finished off. And they meet Ernest and Yuri afterwards and he says to them, so you are the intruders who came to our dungeon by yourselves. And Ernest here keeps making fun of them and says to them that they are insects and don't even deserve to waste his time. And Ernest's words make them very angry, so they immediately all attack him. But after 1 second, we find Ernest has tied them all up and keeps bullying them and says, it's the first time I see a guild of criminals this week. And Yuri strengthens the binding spell she cast on them and says to him, who sent you to us? So they say to her that Milia is the one who sent us to finish you off. And they say to her that he is very strong and it's impossible for you to withstand him. So Ernest goes to Yuri and says to her, forget about him, don't believe his words. But Yuri says to him, wait a second, because she hears a sound. And the one tied up from the Shadow Guild releases magical energy and breaks the ground beneath them and manages to break his bonds. And Yuri here falls, so he immediately runs and grabs her and decides to escape with her. So Ernest gets angry and starts running after him and says to him, if I catch you, I will never let you go. So he says to him, show me how you can catch up with me or know my location, and I want to tell you that if you reach me, they will finish you off immediately. And we return to Alec and his friends while on their way, searching for Ernest and Yuri. They also hear the sound of a large vibration and immediately arrive at the place where they are supposed to gather, but they find a very large opening in the ground. And Olivia here immediately goes down and finds Yuri's headband. And Alec knows that she has been kidnapped and they decide to search for them. Afterwards, we return to the Shadow Guild and see the leader talking to his assistant when he comes bringing Yuri as a hostage, and apparently the Shadow Guild leader is very impressed with her in the end and decides to harass her a little. But Milia interrupts him and says, I don't have time for your silly games. And Yuri, when she first opens her eyes and looks at Milia, recognizes that he is the strong sword king that Olivia is looking for. And suddenly Ernest appears and he is thrusting his spear into the fighter who is eating the adventurer's core and afterwards attacks the Shadow Guild leader. But he performs a spell that produces a sword and blocks his attack. He says, if I hadn't eaten the adventurer's core, I would be dead now. And afterwards he goes towards Yuri and decides to take her and escape, and he knows that Ernest managed to reach them through the bracelet on his hand. So he immediately takes it off and says to him, show me how you will be able to reach us now. And he walks away with Milia, and as soon as Ernest decides to chase them, we see the guild leader intervene and stop him and says to him, to catch up with them you must finish me off first. And Ernest keeps fighting with him until he attacks him with a blow that breaks his sword and thrusts into his chest. So here the guild leader starts falling to the ground and bleeds a large amount of blood and can't believe that he lost to Ernest. And Ernest says to him, it's the first time I see the leader of a guild of criminals so pathetic, and these words make him extremely angry in the end, and he makes him perform a demonic spell, and he manages to gather the blood that fell from him again and put it back into his body and heal himself again. And he manages to summon the sword from his blood and starts threatening Ernest and says to him, this time I will kill you and finish you off. We continue our story and see Ornst standing in front of the leader of the Shadow Guild. We learn his name is Gloria and he threatens Ornst that he will finish him off now. Ornst here is surprised that Gloria used blood magic to heal himself and increase his strength. He says this is the first time he's encountered someone using blood magic and has no information at all on how to deal with them. As usual, Ornst gets overly excited and doesn't pay much attention to Gloria's blood magic. He attacks him and stabs him several times with his weapon, but is surprised when Gloria stands in front of him, grabs his weapon and tells him, clearly you're stupid and don't want to learn. He says, your attacks are impossible to affect me no matter how many there are. Gloria says, even if you cut off my head, I can't die as long as I possess blood magic. He activates his blood magic again and says, every time I take damage, my power increases even more than before. Ornst, of course, is standing there shocked, unable to believe what he's seeing with his own eyes. Gloria uses a bloody mist attack and charges at Ornst. Ornst immediately dodges the first strike but barely manages to block Gloria's second attack. Gloria continues his assaults and Ornst tries to dodge every attack, looking for any way to deal with him and defeat him. He says this blood magic is very powerful and I must find a way to stop it. Then Gloria activates his Bloody Rose skill, summoning thorns made of blood and continues attacking Ornst. Then he grabs him by his legs, spins him in the air, and slams him to the ground with a powerful blow. At that moment, Gloria keeps taunting him, saying, "You're the weakest fighter I've ever seen." He tells him, "I warned you before, you can never defeat me." But suddenly, Ornst gets up again and says, "Who are you calling weak? Watch what I do to you now." He then calls for his weapon and makes it attack Gloria, but Gloria easily dodges the weapon's attack and says, "Won't you stop this nonsense? I told you 100 times your weapon is useless." But he's surprised when Ornst delivers a very powerful punch and sends him flying. Then we go to a flashback from about 6 years ago when Ornst was training with Ki at the academy. Back then, Ki told Ornst, "I'll use my magic sword, and you use the training weapon." Ornst here said, "I don't care about your magic sword." He says, "Since I was little I've been smart and a genius and I've defeated many students." She tells him, "Then I'll be the first one to defeat you in a challenge." And indeed they start fighting each other. Ornst here is surprised by Kai's strength and says, "This is the first time I've found someone who controls a sword with such great speed." Kreza and Yuri say that she has always excelled against anyone he fights. But they are surprised that Ornst, even with a training weapon, can keep up with Chi in the fight. But they say about him in the end that he's always stupid and impulsive and makes very wrong decisions that cause him to lose any duel. Suddenly, the weapon in Ornst's hand flies off by mistake and sticks in the wall. But Ornst doesn't care and immediately charges at Chi, wanting to hit him with his hand. But at the last moment, their teacher stops them because Ornst's weapon was about to hit her and kill her. At night when they sit together, Ki tells him, "The idea you came up with was very smart, to drop your weapon and attack me with your hand." He tells him, "I didn't expect you to do that," not knowing the weapon flew from his hand by accident. Ornst here is filled with grandeur and pride and says, "Yeah, I've always been great and smart." We return from the flashback to the fight again and see Ornst excited, immediately attacking Gloria, punching him many times. He says to him, "I've always been a failure at using magic and don't know anything about it." He says, "All my friends have always been very good at using magic, and yet no one could surpass me, and I managed to defeat them all." He tells him, "Now I'll prove to you that fighting power can defeat anyone who possesses any magic." He delivers a powerful punch, sending him flying and knocking him to the ground. He tells him, "I'll keep hitting you until you stop breathing and die in my hands." Immediately we see Gloria just laughing and getting up again. He says to him, "You keep talking a lot, and you seem to not know anything about magic and haven't learned anything from what I told you." Then he activates his blood magic again and creates a giant spell above him. Ornst is shocked by the power of his magic and the size of the huge spell. Suddenly we see a very powerful magical vortex attacking him. Then the scene shifts to the guild leader sitting with Lorg as being childish, eating constantly. The guild leader asks him, "Did you ask him to join your team?" He says, "Yes, I asked him to join me after he was promoted to rank S." He tells him, "The reason I offered him to join me is that I heard rumors about him, that he can use all 5 magic elements at once, and I heard he managed to defeat the Hydra monster in the strongest dungeon in the city. That's why I was excited to see these abilities with my own eyes." The guild leader tells him, "I'm exactly like you. I believe any rumor I hear about any student here. But honestly, I couldn't believe the rumor that she defeated the Hydra monster in the strongest dungeon in the city." Suddenly, Marble arrives, shouting and telling the guild leader that a big disaster has happened. Olivia escaped from the hospital and went into the dungeon, but she reassures them later saying, "Don't worry, because Kai and his team entered the dungeon with her, and she's surely safe as long as they're with her." The guild leader gets upset and feels he's unnecessary and that anyone who wants to do anything does it without consulting him or getting his opinion. He says, "With this situation, my plan to capture the Shadow Guild will fail." He keeps drinking to forget instead of getting angry at them and hitting them. The 3 of them leave afterwards. Then the guild leader asks Marble, "Is it true the rumor about Kai that he can use fire and lightning magic together?" She says, "I'm sure of it, that he's very skilled in offensive magic." Lorg here is surprised and says, "So he can't use all 5 magic elements together?" He says, "Clearly all the rumors about him are wrong." The guild leader tells him, "I'm sure he can't use all 5 magical elements together, possibly because he lost his power for some reason." He tells them we must act now to enter the dungeon and catch up with them. He says they are in the most dangerous dungeon in the world with very powerful monsters inside, and he hopes nothing happens to them and they don't die inside. At the same time, the Shadow Guild member who kidnapped Yuri is escaping with Milia, trying to reach the final gate of the dungeon. Kai and his friends are trying to search for them. We return to the fight between Ornst and Gloria. Gloria here attacks Ornst with his magical vortex, but at the last moment Ornst is surprised to see Ki standing in front of him. Ki immediately uses reflection magic, blocking Gloria's attack and reflecting it back at him. Gloria can't block the attack when it's reflected back and is sent flying. Then we see Ki checking on Ornst, asking if he's okay. Ornst says, "I'm fine and glad you came at the right time." Then the rest of his friends arrive to check on him. At the same time, we see Gloria very upset that someone interfered in the fight and blocked his attack. Olivia recognizes that Gloria used blood magic in his attack and tells them that magic is very dangerous and annoying, and I'm ready to help you in the Ornst tells them what happened, saying Yuri was kidnapped right before his eyes by a follower of the Shadow Guild who eats magical jewels, and the swordmaster Milia was with him. He tells them the strange thing is they knew Yuri's name and specifically wanted to kidnap her. I don't know what their goal is in targeting and kidnapping her. When Sei asks Ornst where they went, Ornst says, most likely they went to the gate containing the dungeon's magical jewel. He tells them you must go now to search for them and catch. Then Crazy uses healing magic to treat Ornst's injury, takes the bracelet from him and puts it on. Through this bracelet they can locate Yuri. She asks Kai to stay with Ornst and help him in the fight, while she and Olivia will try to escape quickly to catch up with them. Gloria then uses blood magic and attacks them with several magical spells, but Ki again uses reflection magic, blocks them and reflects them back at him. During the explosion caused by the reflection magic, we see Kreza and Olivia trying to escape quickly, so Gloria doesn't notice they fled. Afterwards, Gloria tells Kai, "Stop using reflection magic. I'm annoyed by it." Kai tells him, "If you stop using your blood magic, I'm ready to stop my magic too." Gloria notices that Olivia and Kreza escaped, but brushes it off, as he now wants to focus on fighting Kai and Ornst. Suddenly, we find Gloria collapsing on the ground from exhaustion. Ornst here is happy that Kai's magic managed to tire Gloria out and knock him down. He says the great exhaustion Gloria is experiencing is from using blood magic continuously. He says no matter how powerful magic is, it's still magic, and this is our chance to finish off Gloria and end him. At the same time, on Marble, Lorg and the guild leader's way to the dungeon, the guild leader tells them there is a demonic sect with special markings that allow them to use a very great power no one knows the nature. He says, I hope they don't run into one of them because no one knows how these people think or what kind of great power they possess. We return to Gloria again and see him using a strange spell. Suddenly his body begins to swell, and he attacks Ornst with great speed, biting his shoulder. She immediately creates a thunder spell to protect Ornst and is surprised by Gloria's immense speed and that his thunder magic can't hit him. He wonders, where did he get this great speed from? He then creates a large magical spell with lightning striking from everywhere, continuously electrocuting Gloria, thinking he's managed to finish him off. But Gloria keeps laughing and tells Kai, you're as stupid as Ornst. He tells him there's no use in your magic as long as I possess blood magic. He says blood magic absorbs any magical energy and can recharge my strength and energy again. He summons swords from blood magic again and uses his bloody mist skill, attacking C. Absorbs any magical energy and can recharge my strength. Ko immediately creates a magical barrier to block all his attacks, but his strikes are fast and powerful, breaking Kai's magical barrier. Suddenly Gloria is shocked to see Ornst flying in the air behind him, but Gloria manages to block his attacks. A fierce fight ensues between them. Ornst is surprised that Gloria's strikes have become very fast and that he can't dodge or predict them. He takes a very powerful blow to his face that sends him flying. Gloria keeps hitting him, taunting him, saying, where's that super intelligence you were talking about earlier? He keeps delivering powerful blows until Ornst can't control himself and falls to the ground. Before he kills him, he looks at Kai and says, get ready because your friend is going to die now. I'll let you choose the way. Suddenly Ornst gets up again and plunges his spear into Gloria's stomach. We go to a flashback to when he was training with an old friend long ago. His friend always surpassed him in combat, and he could never defeat him until Ornst decided to train by himself afterwards to improve his level and be able to defeat his friend. But the shock came when he learned his friend had a serious injury, was sick, and would die soon. Ornst tells him, I won't let you die until I defeat you in a fight first. His friend tells him, don't trouble yourself, buddy. Consider yourself stronger than me, and that you've defeated. We return from the flashback and see the spear Ornst plunged into Gloria's stomach beginning to emit powerful fire magic, creating a large hole in his stomach. Ornst tells him, you underestimated me and called me stupid, but now it's time for me to prove to you that I'm a genius and strong. At the same time, Olivia and Kreza are on their way to search for Yuri and catch up with her. But at that moment, Milia and the vice leader of the Shadow Guild, Gloria, have reached the gate containing the dungeon's magical jewel. When they enter the gate, the place looks very strange and large. Immediately, the vice leader runs toward the dungeon's magical jewel to eat it. But Milia is looking at something else entirely, and no one knows what that thing is he's looking at. We continue our story and see Ernest asking Alec to increase the power of the fire magic on him again. He makes Gloria realize that Alec and Ernest tricked him during the fight, and that Ernest's spear emitted fire magic because of Alec. Indeed, Alec uses the offensive fire incantation again and sets Ernest on fire. Ernest here gets excited and immediately attacks him. Gloria says, like, are you crazy? How can you use an offensive fire incantation on your friend? Aren't you afraid for him or what? But Ernest, of course, doesn't care at all and continues attacking Gloria, dealing him many blows while on fire. He actually succeeds in cutting off his... Of course, Gloria won't be able to use his regeneration skill via blood magic because Ernest burned his blood veins, so he can't regenerate again. Ernest tells Alec again, come on, set me on fire so I can finish him off. Indeed, Alec uses the offensive fire magic on him again, and Ernest flies through the air once more preparing to attack Gloria. But Gloria laughs and says to him, it's impossible for me to lose to a weakling like you. However, Ernest ignores his words and attacks him immediately. He thanks Ernest for making him unleash all his power, because I have been searching since I was little for someone who possesses great power so I could defeat them. And after my friend died, I couldn't find anyone with his power to defeat them in the catalog. He keeps delivering very fast blows with a fire spear until he pierces his entire body and manages to defeat him. Afterwards, Ernest says to Gloria after killing him, you should be happy you died by my hands because it's a great honor for you. He tells Ernest, the fight that happened between us, history will tell of it because it was legendary. Then we go to Yuri, and when she first opens her eyes, she finds a member of the Shadow Guild who says to her, finally, you're awake, and shows her the magical prison stone. He tells her that all the adventurers exhaust themselves to find this stone, and he takes it from them in the end and eats it to increase his power. But suddenly he takes a powerful hit from Melia, who finishes him off and says, shut up, I'm tired of your blabbering. She takes the prison gem from him and says, I don't need the Shadow Guild for anything now. Then she looks at Yuri and says, come on, get up to take me to what I want. She says, take you where? He says, take me to the tree that grants wishes. This tree is named Eden, but it's the first time Yuri hears of it. Melia tells her, you are the only one who possesses magical energy that lets you see this tree and know its location. Yuri says, it's the first time I've heard this name, and I don't know anything about what you're saying. Then the Shadow Guild member gets up and says, what nonsense have you done? Do you think if you kill me you'll escape punishment? He says, no one has ever managed to deceive the Shadow Guild before and get away with it. Melia laughs at the silly talk he's saying and says, I joined you only to search for power, but now you are of no use. Then she delivers a final blow to annihilate him and says, the time I spent with the Shadow Guild wasn't bad because I gained some experience. She says if I can't find strong enemies to challenge, then I have no choice but to gain the hatred of people. Suddenly we see Olivia and Kriza have arrived in front of him. Of course, when Olivia first sees him, she keeps threatening him. Yuri is happy that Olivia and Kriza have come to protect and rescue her quickly. She tells Melia, be careful, these aren't my only friends. Ernest and Alec will come soon too. So this is your only chance now to escape. Melia says to her, do you think a few of your miserable friends will make me scared and run away? And when he first hears Alec's name, he knows it well and says, surely this is Alec from the Eggert family. He says, I've been waiting for a long time to fight him and know his strength. We return to Alec and Ernest afterwards and see Ernest telling him, I can't continue anymore. This fight has exhausted me to the end and drained all my strength. So Alec gives him a magical potion to regain some energy, but he still feels tired. He asks Alec to continue the journey alone and tells him, be careful of Mai the Swordmaster because he can finish off the prison monster very easily. I want to tell you he is the strongest fighter you might see in your life. He remembers when his teacher always mocked him for being impulsive and making stupid decisions, telling him, you will never meet the Swordmaster Melia one day. But if it happens, I advise you to withdraw and run away quickly. Don't try to challenge him because you can never defeat him. He tells him, I'm embarrassed to tell you this now, and my advice to you is not to do anything reckless in front of him. Alec takes the instant teleportation chain from him, reassures him and says, don't worry about me, I'll know how to deal with him well. I promise I will rescue our friends from any danger. We return to Melia afterwards and he says to Olivia, I don't have time to joke and play with you. Olivia immediately runs towards him and says, you will pay the price for killing my mother. But then she leaves him and runs to Yuri to save her. We learn that she has a plan. As soon as she moves away from Melia, she calls to Kriza and says, come on, everything is ready now. Indeed, we see Kriza holding a magical arrow and preparing to shoot it at Melia. As soon as she uses the magical arrow, we see it split into a very large number of arrows and rains down on Melia all at once. But Melia immediately removes the scarf he's wearing and easily deflects all the arrows, breaking them. Afterwards, we see Yuri used her magic and managed to bind Melia with magical chains. Kriza begins to threaten him and says, don't underestimate your power. She prepares to use her strongest attack. But first, Yuri uses her support magic to increase Krisa's power. Krisa here uses the fire arrow, her strongest attack, and immediately shoots a very powerful fire arrow at him. But the Swordmaster Melia, with a single strike from his sword, breaks the iron chains and deflects Krisa's Phoenix fire arrow, defeating her easily. Krisa is shocked by his great power and says, "That's my strongest attack, and not only that, I also used Yuri's enhancement magic to raise her level, and he deflected it so easily." Suddenly, Olivia appears from behind him and prepares to attack him. We learn why Melia let her save Yuri, because he knew that was the key to their attack and that they would use support magic to raise their level. He wanted to test their strength and see its limit. She says, "I'm not surprised by anything at all because this is the legendary Swordmaster Melia." We learn that he is the only one in the Adventurers Guild who got a license to form a team alone. When she attacks him, he easily deflects her strike and says to her, "I thought you had given up on the idea of revenge." She says, "No, of course not. I will never give it up, and I won't allow anyone but me to kill you. You must pay for what you did." She attacks him, but he notices that the wounds on her body have lessened. He says to her, "Clearly your friends used healing magic to treat your injuries." He says this is the biggest mistake you made. He says the kids you're protecting won't help you at all. He says, "I am disappointed in you after all I taught you in the past period." He says, "If you think you can defeat me just because you have friends, I'd like to tell you that's the biggest mistake." We go to a flashback when Olivia's mother died. We see Melia entered and found her crying because all her friends were bullying her, and she became alone. They refused to play with her because she now had no family and no one to adopt her. He says to her, "On the contrary, you should be happy because being alone will make you much stronger. It will make you stronger than those who bullied you, and you might become stronger than me personally." She keeps begging him to train her to make her a strong fighter. Indeed, Melia keeps training her until he teaches her the basics of sword use. We return from the flashback and see her attacking him, but he deflects her strike. Afterwards, she says to him, "Stop with the idealism you're in and stop giving judgments and sermons because you are the most self-serving person." She says, "I've always relied on myself and I reached this rank through my own effort without anyone's." She says, "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time to take revenge on you and avenge my mother." But Melia here keeps laughing at her and then delivers a very powerful blow that sends her flying. Krisa here gets angry and tries to help Olivia, attacking Melia with a magical arrow again. Set to predict, but Melia catches the arrow very easily and says to her, "This attack is very weak, maybe weaker than the last one." He looks at Olivia and says, "As I told you, being alone will make you much stronger, and now you will see with your own eyes." He begins to approach Krisa and Yuri to finish them off. Olivia calls to Krisa and Yuri and says, "Run away now because you won't be able to do anything against him." But the two of them don't move from their spots and prepare to attack him. Melia here prepares to attack and grabs his sword. Olivia keeps shouting and telling them to run, but it seems it's too late. We see him strike a very powerful blow with his sword, but suddenly we find Olivia has disappeared from where she was. We learn that before Melia attacked them, Olivia ran quickly and stood in front of his attack to block it and protect her friends. Indeed, we see her take the blow for them. The blow, of course, is strong and fatal, and she falls to the ground. She looks at Krisa and says, "I succeeded in protecting you." Immediately, Krisa uses healing magic on her to treat her injury. Olivia says, "I am very, very weak. I should have listened to Melia because being alone would have made me much stronger." She feels literally despairing and says, "The hope now is in Alec." Indeed, we see Alec has reached them, flying in the air and descending on Melia with a very powerful strike. But Melia again deflects his attack, smiling and very excited that Alec has reached. Afterwards, Alec says to Yuri, "I'm fine and the most important thing is to take care of Olivia now." He goes to attack Melia and a very strong fight ensues between them. Alec asks him, "Why did you do all this to Olivia?" Melia says to him, "Actually, you're right. If she were truly a weak fighter, I wouldn't have done all this to her." He says, "I always look for a strong person to challenge." Alec gets very angry at his words and attacks him again, but Melia disappears from in front of him and appears behind him. He says, "Probably you're a wizard. Will you keep fighting with me with the sword like this a lot and not use magic or what?" He says, "I'm very excited to see your magic." Alec looks at him and says, "Expensive, but the request is..." He prepares to execute his strongest lightning incantation, summoning the legendary lightning dragon, and attacks Melia immediately with full force. Melia stands in front of him like a lion, raising his sword waiting for the attack. Immediately he strikes this dragon with the sword he has and keeps resisting the power of Alec's strike, absorbing the power of Alec's legendary magic until Melia manages to deflect the blow and splits the dragon in half. Melia is surprised that he got injured due to the great magical power of Alec's legendary magic until Melia manages to... Well, so he says to him, "Your power is not trivial, but I thought it would be stronger than this." He says, "If you have another magic you're hiding, I'd like to see it quickly because I'm in a hurry." Alec looks at him annoyed and says, "If you wish to see a very cool and legendary magic that will easily finish you off, then please focus on me and don't take your eyes off me." Then Yuri realizes that Alec has decided to use his forbidden magic. We go to a flashback when Ernest was warning Alec, telling him not to do anything reckless. But Alec here apologizes to him and says, "I am forced to use my special magic." He begins to concentrate to bring out all the mana energy inside his body. He says to Melia, "I knew I couldn't defeat you in a direct confrontation, and I had to use this magic because it's the only solution to defeat you." He says, "Alex says this is my strongest incantation, and this incantation is what will allow me to protect my friend." We learn that he wants to merge the 5 magical elements at once, like earth, water, fire, and air magic, to use them together in a very strong attack. Of course, Melia is very happy, thrilled, and excited to see Alec's legendary magic. Afterwards, we see Alec able to gather the 5 magical elements and merge them together into one attack, and immediately he attacks Melia with it. But will this attack be able to defeat him? And we continue our story and learn some information afterward about magical energy. And we learn that it acts like blood in the human body, and that there are tens of thousands of different magical energies, and that this magical energy exists inside the human body, and there's no way to absorb it from the outside. And we go to a flashback and see Ernest reading a magical book talking about the boss of the dungeon on the 68th floor. And that boss is the Hydra monster. And it is known that the Hydra monster possesses many heads, and each head uses a different magical energy. And to defeat the Hydra monster, you must use all types of magic against it to be able to defeat it. And he literally goes crazy and says, "How will we use the 5 magical elements during the fight at once?" So Yuri says to him, "Calm down a bit." And she says to him that Alec can use fire and lightning magic, and with that there will be 3 magical elements left, earth, wind, and water, and we can divide them among us 3. And Crazy decides to learn wind magic and says this magic suits me. And Yuri says, "I can use earth and water magic, but I can't use any offensive spells." And Ernest here says to them, "Forget about me, because I'm not planning to learn magic at all, and I won't use any spells in combat." So Crazy keeps arguing with him and says, "You have to help us in the fight if you want to defeat the Hydra." And she gets angry with him and uses a wind spell and hits him with it, sending him flying. And Alec, after finishing reading the book, knows he lacks the use of wind, water, and earth magic. And he says, "I must find a way to make the magical energy flow inside my body, and then I can use the 5 magical elements at once during combat." And he thinks about drawing magical energy from the elements around him. But Yuri and Crazy start warning him and say any magical energy entering from the outside, the magical energy inside your body might reject it, and then you could be poisoned. And they keep talking about complicated matters. And Ernest, of course, doesn't understand anything and says to them, "Simplify the topic for me so I can understand what you're saying." And then he decides to implement the idea in his head anyway. And he takes the magic books and says to them, "Give me a chance to try, maybe I'll succeed." And Yuri here says, "Alec is always reckless, but I am confident that he will succeed in any idea he wants to implement." And Ernest, of course, doesn't understand anything but says to them, "As long as he has an idea, then we must support him and stand with him to implement it, because I'm confident he is very smart and will be able to execute what's in his mind." And we see Alex standing outside and starts applying the ideas in his mind to learn how to merge the 5 magical elements together and use them at once. And we return from the flashback and see Miley not believing that Alec managed to merge the magical elements at once and use them against him. And he says he is stupid and will sacrifice himself. But Yuri says Alec is very smart and can find a way to merge the magical elements together, and I am confident he will succeed in using them. And indeed, we see Alec actually succeeded in merging the 5 magical elements and attacks Miley. And Miley here tries to block the attacks, but when Alec uses wind magic and Miley tries to block it with his sword, he is surprised that he failed to block it and receives a serious wound in his chest. And Crazy and Yuri are happy that Alec's fusion magic managed to injure Miley. After that, Alec continues using his strange magical spells. But this time Miley tries to evade the attacks and escape from them until Alec manages to surround him inside a strong magical vortex, and we see him laughing, confident in himself that he can block Alec's magical attacks. And immediately he draws the swords he has and keeps striking in the magical vortex surrounding him and succeeds in destroying it. And the excitement is at max level for Miley, and he is very excited that Alec possesses great power. And Alec here does not give up and keeps attacking him with strong magical attacks, but Miley clearly can deal with them and runs at them with full confidence and tries to block them. And he says to Alec, "I am very happy because I finally found the strong person I can challenge and test my real strength." And he is surprised that after blocking Alec's attacks, the sword in his hand breaks. And he says to Alec, "I become happy when I fight someone stronger than me because fighting against them makes me much stronger than before." And he throws the broken sword from his hand and says to Alec, "Get ready now because I will show you my real strength for real." And Alec is shocked. Miley says to him in the name of his teacher and immediately asks him and says, "What do you know about my teacher?" So Miley says to him, I know a lot about him and know you're looking for him, but it's better for you to forget about this topic completely. And he says to him, clearly your teacher didn't tell you anything at all and didn't tell you how your mother died. And he says to Alec, you surely think your mother died because of an epidemic. But that's not the truth at all. It's impossible for your mother to die from a non-serious disease epidemic. And Alec is shocked, of course, by what he hears and says to Miley, tell me everything you know and you will know the truth one day. And when Alec keeps pressing him, Miley says to him, forget about this topic completely. And he takes out the dungeon's magical stone and starts absorbing its energy. And suddenly we see a very strong magical circle around Miley. And when that magical energy explodes, we see his sword literally absorb the dungeon's magical stone. And he says to Alec, the skill of merging magical elements won't last with you for long, so accomplish now and let's fight. And after that we go to Fizzle and Lorge at Ernest's place, and they start treating him. And Fizzle is surprised here that he decided to use the skill of merging magical elements during combat. And Marble is happy because she is confident Alec can win the fight. But Ernest says to her, don't be too happy, because this skill is very dangerous and depletes all the magical energy in the body of anyone who uses it. And he says the allowed period for using it is only 10 minutes, and if the duration exceeds that, he will die. And he tries to get up to go help Alec, but his injury is serious and he can't bear it. And Fizzle says to him, it seems your last battle consumed all your strength, and we see, after that a strange priest arrives at Gloria's place, and he has a coffin with him. And as soon as he opens the coffin, a strange demonic energy comes out and starts grabbing Gloria and pulls him inside the coffin and locks it. And Fizzle the guildmaster hopes that Alec will win the fight against the Sword King. So Marble says to him, don't be afraid for Alec at all. I am sure that if he sets his mind to anything, he can accomplish it. But Fizzle says to her, this time there might be danger because Miley has the dungeon's gem. And he says to her that Miley was also granted to be an S-rank fighter alone, and that's because he possesses the power of 4 S-rank fighters multiplied together. And imagine then, if the dungeon's gem is also merged with his power, see how far his power will reach. And he says to her that Alec is in trouble to win this battle. And we return quickly to the battle between Miley and Alec. And Miley immediately uses a magical strike with his sword, so Alec immediately makes a magical shield to block the attack. But Miley's magical strike is very strong and manages to break the first magical barrier he made, so he is forced to make more barriers to deflect the attack and block it. And Miley here continues the attack and keeps striking magical blows with his sword. And Yuri starts making ice and rock barriers to help Alec, but Miley's attacks are very fast, and Alec can't block them and starts to feel tired and exhausted, and his eyes start to blur and he can't see in front of him. And Olivia here recognizes the technique Miley uses during combat, and it's a magical spell he merges with his sword during combat. And she tries to get up and says to them, I have a plan to help Alec. And Alec knows that 5 minutes have passed since using his technique, and he doesn't have much time left and must end the battle quickly. At that moment Miley attacks him again with a magical strike, and when Alec makes the magical barrier he can't block it and is sent flying and falls to the ground. And Miley continues attacking him. And Alec tries to block his attacks but tries to find a way to stop the magical gem that absorbed his power. And we see Yuri tries to help him and uses the Iron Chains spell, but Miley manages to break them very easily. After that we see Alec uses all the spells he knows and doesn't know and keeps attacking Miley with very strong blows. But Miley clearly has something up his sleeve and manages to block all of Alec's attacks, even when he hits him with his strongest spell. And when Miley blocks it with a very strong strike, a powerful explosion occurs. And after the explosion ends we see Miley standing like a lion. And Alec tries to find a way to defeat him quickly, so Crazy calls to him and says, use the Beast's Lair technique. And Alec here transforms the magical staff into a sword, so Miley says to him, are you planning to abandon magic in the attack and use a sword to fight me? And immediately attacks him with a magical strike with his sword. But suddenly we see a strange spell opening beneath them. And we learn that Crazy made this spell to absorb the magical energy of the dungeon's gem that Miley absorbed. And she says, you too will be forced to use the sword but without any magic. And Alec immediately attacks him with the sword he has, but Miley deals him one very strong blow. We see Alec falls to the ground from the force of the blow, and Miley says to him, that's a very silly trick. You'd be stupid if you think you can defeat me by using a sword. And at that moment, Alec takes out a magical healing potion to start healing his wounds. And he says to Miley, I have never surrendered ever, and I always win any battle I enter with the help of my friends. So Miley says to him, are you an idiot? Do you think you can defeat me, you and your friends together? So Alec says to him, let's see. He attacks him and a very strong sword fight ensues between them, but still he can't match Miley's strength and sword and after that Miley says to him, you have less than a minute left for your magical skills power to end. And Alec here refuses to surrender and attacks Miley again. but Miley keeps wounding him with strong blows. But in the end, Alec succeeds in dealing a very strong blow to his face and injures him. So Miley says to him, "I must thank you for this beautiful fight." And he says to him, "I admit you are skilled in using magic and you also seem very skilled in using a sword." And at the moment he attacks Alec to finish him off, we see Olivia intervenes and gives him a very strong blow in his chest. So he says to her, "Miley, clearly you are foolish and don't want to learn," but Olivia asks him and says, "Why did you betray me? Why did you raise me and teach me to use a sword, and in the end you abandoned me?" But Miley remains silent and doesn't answer her, so she keeps yelling at him and says, "Why did you betray me?" So he says to her, "Do you think with your last attack like this, that means you're great and can defeat me?" And he says to her, "I am ready to answer all the questions in your mind on the condition that you defeat me in combat." So immediately she goes to attack him and keeps fighting him with a sword. But Miley can block all her attacks, and when Olivia feels tired, she is surprised that Alec is standing next to her, and helped her hold her sword again. And he says to Miley, "I want you to deliver a message to my teacher." So he says to him, "What is the message you want to deliver?" So Alec says to him, "The message is that I managed to defeat the Sword King by myself." And he says to Olivia, "Only 10 seconds are left for my power to disappear." And immediately the two of them keep attacking Miley. And Miley, while blocking their attacks, keeps counting until the 10 seconds disappear. And after that we see the sword with Alec also disappears, and the appearance of the great power he had is gone. And we see Miley standing in front of him and preparing to finish him off, and he says to him, "Enjoyed fighting against you." But suddenly we see Crazy saying to him, "Indeed, the time is up." And we see the magical spell that Crazy had made beneath them disappearing. And we learn that this was Olivia's plan, which was that they drain the magical energy Miley has for just 1 second, and in that second they all attack him at the same moment. And indeed, we see the three of them using all their spells on him. And Alec immediately uses the lightning skill and attacks Miley. But Miley manages to resist and says to Alec, "Your magic now has become weak." And he tries to strike him with his sword. But Olivia intervenes and stops his attack and prevents him from blocking Alec's attack. And immediately Alec uses the lightning skill on him again and deals him a strong blow. But after the explosion we see Miley holding the sword and still decides to attack Alec. But Crazy intervenes and gives him a strong magical arrow that sends him flying. And we see the arrow pierces his chest, and he falls to the ground, not believing himself that they managed to trick him. And he says that all of Yuri's, Alec's and Olivia's attempts recently were done with the aim of deceiving him so that Crazy could prepare her final attack. But I wonder, is her attack really capable of defeating Miley? We will know, of course, the answer in our final episode. So if you are as excited as I am for the final episode, don't forget to support us with a like and subscribe. See you in the next time.